Good evening and welcome to the last regular public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, June 20th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone and remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the htsb.ca website. I'd also like to ask that you turn any of your devices to silent mode. So this evening we have Trustee Mansour on the phone, and we're missing Associate Director Bogue this evening. I don't see anybody else that's missing. No. Okay, I'm going to start with a sort of a little announcement. So June the 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day. It is a day recognizing and celebrating the heritage, cultures, and contributions of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Indigenous people in Canada. Last year, we sent each of our schools printed canvas to display in prominent locations in our schools. The canvases were adorned with the words of the traditional land and territory acknowledgement, and that was developed by local knowledge keepers and members of the Halton Indigenous Education Advisory Council. The land and territory acknowledgement used by the Halton District School Board was developed with elders, knowledge guides, and the guidance from the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This statement recognizes the historical and current treaty relationships in the area of Halton District, the Halton District School Board encompasses. It is important for everyone to understand the significance of treaties, that they are applicable today, and that they ensure the rights of many First Nations people. While some schools incorporate this statement as part of their daily announcements, we requested that all HDSB schools share the HDSB land and treaty acknowledgement on June 21st. Having this statement read in its entirety as the day begins or at events in the schools provides everyone present with the opportunity to take an active role in individually honoring the land and territory. It also provides an opportunity for those present to reflect on the significance of this statement. It was our intention that all schools also display the flag of the Mississaugas of the New Credit on June 21st. However, unfortunately, our order was not processed in time for this year. However, you can see we have added another flag pole in our boardroom where this flag can be permanently displayed throughout the year and remind us of the significant history of the land on which we are settled and living and learning upon. This evening, Trustee Daniele will be saying the acknowledgement of the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawadarand, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Miigwech.
Miigwech. And are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest this evening? Oh, I also want to acknowledge, I just looked down and saw a little rainbow. We're all in the inner and outer circle, I believe, showing our pride today. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Next, we are up to the agenda.
Point of personal privilege.
Okay.
Trustee Grimmans.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I thought it was going to be fine. I do have an announcement that I think will affect the agenda this evening. Earlier this year, I let trustees know that I would likely become ineligible to continue as a trustee sometime before the end of term due to moving out of Halton And I had similarly let my constituents know via social media. I now have a date. So it is very exciting. As much as I'm sad to leave, it's a very exciting time for our family. But my last day as a trustee will be July 20th. And I'd like to just take an opportunity, if I can make it through, to thank the residents of Milton for putting their trust in me to represent them at this table. I've tried my best to represent you well during my time here. And I also like to thank my trustee colleagues and the senior admin team. It's truly been a pleasure, honestly, and a privilege to have worked with you these past 4 years. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Trustee Graves, for making that announcement. You have been very upfront with us about the possibility of you not continuing on, and we've been following along with great interest on your adventures coming up. Since you have been upfront, we've been able to, and you gave notice a bit to the director, vice chair, and myself late last week, and so we were able to prepare a possible a report for a possible replacement for you. So we will need to, we have a recommendation, and I have a report that I would ask the secretary of the board to distribute for myself. And that's a recommendation for filling the Milton Wards 1, 6, 7, 8 trustee position by appointment. We will add the report to the agenda at number 522 this evening, and I ask Manager Gortmaker to add it to the online agenda package as well. I also wanted to say on behalf of all of the trustees that it has been a pleasure working with you around this table and in the work of the board. Your passion for education simply radiates through all your words and actions. Thank you for all you have done for the students of this board. Has everybody got a copy of the report? Oh, it will also be arriving in your mailboxes electronically. Okay, so before we put the agenda on the table, we actually need to make a few more adjustments. So we need to add a presentation at 231 for an OPSPA award presentation. We need to move 5.1, the student trustee reports, to just after that presentation so that Trustee Mansour may be able to continue his studies for his exams. And we also need to adjust number 426, Educational Development Charge Bylaw Report 18095 on page 96 of your board package to the first action item for the evening, as we now have guests that come along with that particular report. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Trustee Collard and Trustee Amos. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're on to the Inspire Awards. Everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated: families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. The Inspire Award is given to an individual or group who is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board, who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Award recipients choose where they would like to receive their award, and this evening we have two presentations. I would like to call up first Trustee Kelly Amos. And I would also like to call up Melissa Tarkstra. I'm just going to give you some information about Melissa. Melissa is a teacher at White Oak Secondary School. She provides creative and enhanced learning opportunities for students by collaborating with colleagues and community partners. Melissa was able to provide her geography and civics students with the opportunity to participate in community visits and meet community partners with Halton Region and the town of Oakville to build advocacy skills and provide a youth voice to town initiatives. This innovative and creative learning opportunity inspired students to engage in their community and empowered them to share their voice to help shape policies, programs, and services. By initiating a project to foster positive relationships, Melissa's grade 11 leadership class worked with Montclair Public School students to build a sense of community and ease the transition to high school. Melissa has engaged and inspired her community and teaching partners with her enthusiasm, open-mindedness, organizational skills, inclusion, collaborative nature, and her vision for creative initiatives. Congratulations. Family and friends, please come forward to take any pictures you would like. Next, I would like to invite up Vice Chair Al Harrison and Laura Lee Dick, please. Laura Lee is a teacher at Gladys Spears Public School. Her kindness, understanding, and accepting nature inspires students, staff, and parents. Parents appreciate the hard work Laura Lee puts into helping students grow. She develops strategies based on individual student needs and creates an environment where students feel accepted and have the confidence to establish friendships. She goes above and beyond to provide open communication with parents and encourages families to use community resources. Parents have used the following quote to describe Laura Lee. A good teacher is someone who can think like a student, look like a parent, and behave like a boss. Laura Lee demonstrates that sometimes to truly understand what a student is feeling, you must think like them. Laura Lee's approach to teaching is inspiring. Congratulations. Please come forward to take pictures. Now we're going to have a picture with both of the award winners. Okay, so the following Inspire Award winners have chosen to receive their awards at their place of work. So there's quite a list here. Krista McGrath, Angelica Henning, Irene Garianis, Guyanaris, and Sylvia Richards are secretaries at Craig Kilberger Secondary School. Linda Robin is a guidance secretary at Craig Kilberger Secondary School. Anne Elliott is a senior secretary at Craig Kilberger Secondary School. And Darcy Walker is a library technician from Craig Kilberger Secondary School. John Bosco is a principal at Charles R. Baudouin Public School. Laz De Silva is a caretaker at Ryerson Public School. Sabrina Ramderhall is a parent volunteer with Falgarwood Public School. Nicola Jandrew is a parent volunteer at Falgarwood. And Tara McMinn is a teacher at Dr. Frank J. Hayden Secondary School. And Chris Hall is a teacher at Georgetown District High School. Congratulations to all the recipients for the Inspire Awards this month. Okay, so we have no delegations this evening, but we have yet another presentation. This is another award presentation, and I would like to call to the center Trustee Kelly Amos and Trustee Dasha Metropolitansky. The Ontario Public School Boards Association accepts nominations for a prestigious award, the Jack A. MacDonald Award of Merit. The Jack A. MacDonald Award of Merit is awarded to an elementary or secondary school student attending an Ontario public school within an OPSPA member board for a sound academic record and outstanding community service and leadership. The late Jack A. MacDonald touched the lives of hundreds of trustees and teachers and school boards throughout Ontario during his more than 26 years in the field of education. As a school trustee in Brantford, an active member of the Home and School Association, and executive director and secretary-treasurer of the Ontario Public School Trustees Association for 17 years, Jack MacDonald compiled an impressive record of accomplishments and achievements. His care and concern for Ontario education, and specifically for students, prompted his colleagues and friends to institute this award in his memory in 1987. It is a fitting tribute to Jack MacDonald that this award honors an elementary or secondary student attending an Ontario public school who has earned a sound academic record and has shown outstanding service and leadership in his or her community. Congratulations, Dasha. Out of all of the nominations across the entire province, you are the recipients of this year's Jack A. MacDonald Award of Merit. Congratulations. I think we should all get a picture with Dasha. So would all trustees come forward? Okay, so since this is an important time of the year for our trustees, student trustees, we have moved up their report to this point in the meeting. So Dasha and Muktased, if you can hear us, if you want to do your student trustee report.
Okay, you're up.
This is where I say my grand closing statement.
Yes.
All right. I guess this is quite an emotional moment. Being a student trustee, really defines your year. Great would have been completely different if I wasn't, and I am endlessly grateful that I have had this opportunity. I've learned a lot. Had the chance to work with a lot of incredible individuals, including everyone in this room. And I mean, I'm like super tired right now, so I can't like formulate the correct words. But I just want to say like how amazing it has been working with each and every one of you. And if I were to redo high school, I would never change this one part. I would always go for being a student trustee, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much for everything.
Two years ago, whoops. Good? Awesome, okay. 2 years ago, I sat in this exact same spot and I gave my very first student trustee report, and not much has changed since then in the sense of the trustees in the room are the same. Stuart gives me a reassuring smile before I begin my report. I feel partially uncertain as to what I'm going to say until I start saying it. But I guess the biggest difference is how I'm feeling. When I gave my very first student trustee report, it was a nervous type of excitement because I didn't fully know what I'd gone myself into or what lay ahead. And now I'm definitely excited about the future, but it is a sad happiness thinking back and reflecting on the past. Being a student trustee was nothing short of incredible. And I wouldn't trade this experience and the experiences that I've had for anything else in the world. If there's a term that I would not use to describe it, it's easy. There were definitely some weeks where it felt like I was at the board office or board meetings or ACO meetings more than I was at school or with my family. There were many difficult conversations, divisive issues. There were moments where I truly had to think about why I'd become a student trustee in the first place and what the position meant to me. But I think looking back at it now, that these moments that were so challenging are the ones that I actually value the most because they mean the most for me, for personal growth. And in spite of all of these challenging moments, I'm so proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish over the past 2 years, both at the regional level for Halton and at the provincial level for ACO. I'm so proud of what we have done over the past 2 years, both with Zaid last year and Muktased this year. I'm so proud, for instance, of the fact that we've gotten student representatives on board level committees on a range of committees from equity, the environment, accessibility, French, all hosts of issues. And I think that this is something that we can continue to build on into future years. These are committees where important conversations are being had and important decisions are being made, and to have students be a part of them and play a key role, I think, is so important. I'm also proud of the fact that we created our own board level committee. We created the drug policy working group where we brought together students and board staff who work on well-being and mental health and police officers and nurses and guidance staff to begin to have important conversations about drug use in our schools and what we can do to mitigate the harms to our students. I know that Muktased co-chaired the committee this year, and they were able to get out some surveys to begin some important discussions, but once again, I hope that that's a legacy for next year and something that they can continue to build on. I'm also proud of our student trustee election policy, the fact that we introduced online voting, that we created an equal weighted vote for elementary and secondary students. It took a long time to rewrite that student trustee election policy and to finally get it passed by the board, but I think the policy that we have in place now is more accessible, is more equitable, and is ultimately more democratic than the one that was in place when we began our terms. I'm also very proud that the first completely online election that we had ran so successfully that we went from having 50 to 70 students voting max in an election for their student trustee to over 200 tuning into the live stream of the speeches, and to over 1,000 casting a ballot for their elected representative. And I hope, and I'm confident that in a couple of years, the vast majority of students will know what a student trustee is and will be exercising their right to vote for their elected representative. I'm also very proud of the fact that we created a video with the communications team about the student trustee and the student senate position, and that video was distributed to schools across the board so that now students will know, hopefully, who their student senator is, how they can get involved, and the mechanisms that are in place for them to have their voice heard. And I'm also proud, last but not least, of the two great HYLS, the Halton Youth Leadership Symposium conferences that we ran. We focused on making them elementary only. And it was awesome to see, for example, that at last year's HYLS, so many of the elementary students who were there then came and joined Senate this year. So more students are learning about the board, more students are learning about student voice at the board, and that was a really big goal that we had this year. In addition to being a student trustee at Halton, I also had the honor and privilege of being elected to serve on the executive council for Osta-Aco twice. In my first year as a student trustee, I served as the public board council president, and then this year I was honored to serve as the president of the Ontario Student Trustees Association. And we had an incredible year, and I couldn't be prouder of our team and all the work that we accomplished. I'm so proud of the fact that we had student representation at every single major Ministry of Education consultation. We attended over 30 this year, and as a result, we're able to provide student voice on a whole host of topics, ranging from learning skills on report cards to transportation funding to curriculum changes to French education in the province. And as a result of attending those consultations and participating in the government reviews, we were able to successfully lobby for a number of changes that I think are really going to impact students and student trustees. For example, the government has now committed to giving boards the flexibility and autonomy to introduce a 2-year term for student trustees. They've mandated that school boards have 2 or 3 student trustees, not just 1 anymore. We've got a commitment from the government to increase the professional development budget for student trustees so that our colleagues, particularly those in northern and rural boards, no longer have to make a choice between using their budget to host and run local initiatives for student voice in their own board and using their budget to have their own professional development opportunities as student trustees and to attend Osta-Aco conferences. And last but not least, we secured a change to the PAR guidelines to ensure that there would be student representation on PAR committees when they're considering closing a school moving forward, and that's something that we're really proud of. I'm also really proud of the fact that we released reports that went very in-depth as to 2 major surveys that we conducted in December. We released a 46-page report about the results of the Ontario Student Parent and Educator Survey. And then at the same time in December, we organized another huge online survey that received over 8,000 responses from students from 62 school boards. We used all of that data to put together the student platform, which was a really important report for us and I think for students in the province, that essentially put forward 16 policy recommendations that the political parties could implement in their education platforms for the June election, which just passed. We did the press release, and I'll never forget that experience of doing the press release at Queen's Park in January with our public affairs officer. I'll never forget the attention that that story got and the fact that we were able to create a press release. We told our local student trustees from across the province to customize that press release, to put their own spin on it, to make it important to the students in their board, and to go to local media outlets. And as a result, we were featured in all parts of Ontario, Timmins, Chatham, Owen Sound, Sarnia, Kawartha, Avon-Maitland, Kitchener, Waterloo, Brampton, just to name a few. We received provincial and national media coverage for the student platform. I'll never forget my opportunities to speak on TVO's The Agenda with Steve Paikin, CTV's Your Morning, Radio Canada, the Toronto Star, Metro Morning, all of these incredible people and opportunities that I was fortunate enough to have. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of for the student platform is the political impact that it had and the fact that it really mattered to students and was successful as an advocacy effort. All 3 parties referenced and discussed our student platform in question period at Queen's Park multiple times. The PCs and the Liberals both committed an unprecedented amount of money to mental health funding, particularly for secondary schools and secondary students. We were quoted in the government budget press release when they put out their statement. And in line with our recommendations under the 21st Century Learning component of the student platform, the Ministry of Education recently announced a number of changes, like funding to close the disparity between the student to guidance counselor ratio for elementary and secondary students, and funding for teachers to help grade 7 and 8 students undertake career pathway planning classes. So all of this we were able to do, and beyond the student platform, we took more initiatives on, like reviewing new curriculum that's coming into place about school board governance. So we're going to be teaching students taking the grade 10 civics class about trustees, student trustees, and how the school board works. It's something that we've been pushing for a long time, and we were able to review that curriculum, which will hopefully be implemented in the fall. We made a new partnership with School Mental Health Assist to develop mental health resources from a student perspective that'll hopefully go to all of the boards and all of the staff that are teaching those sorts of things in the upcoming year. So all of those things I'm so proud of and wouldn't have been possible without all of the people that I worked with, both at the board and at the provincial level. And I'm so proud of all of these accomplishments, but they really would not have been possible without the support of so many different people. So the first group that I really want to thank is Student Senate, both this year and last year. Because to describe our student senators as talented, passionate, driven, ambitious would be an understatement. These kids are incredible, and I know Halton is currently in good hands with the work that they're doing in their schools, but there's an even brighter future ahead. I think about the students who went to the board level committees, the representatives that we had. Just to give some examples, Carter from Bateman, he was on the accessibility committee, and he was able to secure new equipment for Bateman's library and also bring up a whole host of accessibility related concerns about ramps and wheelchair accessibility and elevators at many schools across our board. Haley and Romina were our reps for the mental health group. The board was working on a new mental health and well-being strategy, and they said, what do we want one of our main pillars to be? They came back to Student Senate, asked the students, what do you think is important? They heard back, suicide intervention is a big problem and something that needs to be focused on. They brought that back to the committee, and now it's one of the major pillars that Halton's going to be focusing on for its well-being plan. We had student senators who were so dedicated to student voice. Just more examples, Sarah from Falgarwood, Sanad from West Oak, they created student voice clubs at their schools. They went around from class to class and had 10-minute, 15-minute conversations with students as to what the major issues at their school were, any questions that they had, and they brought them to us. These are the types of senators that we had this year, and I'm personally so inspired by the work that they did in terms of representing their students and making a difference in their own schools. And like I said before, these kids are true leaders, and I can only wait to see what impact they're going to continue to have in the next few years, because they're already doing so much, and we couldn't have asked for a better group both this year and last year. Speaking of Student Senate, the next two people I need to thank are Mr. Poitras and Ms. Anibali, our staff advisors. In addition to their extremely busy and time-consuming full-time jobs as being vice principals, they were also tasked with helping us run Student Senate and achieve any sorts of the goals that we wanted to achieve this year. And they knocked it out of the park. Without their help, we couldn't have done nearly half of the things that we were able to do this year. We probably wouldn't have been able to do very much at all. I'll never forget Miss A's idea for us to speak to the principals and the vice principals, elementary and secondary, at the start of the year about the student senator and the student trustee position. Thanks to them, we were able to do that. I'll never forget Mr. Poitras organizing a hot chocolate station at the last student senate meeting before the winter break. Definitely probably the best student senate meeting in HDSB history by the looks of those kids' faces, and all the work that he did in making HYLS possible. So I really want to thank them and all the work that they were able to do. In terms of other people that we were able to work with, the communications and the tech team at this board are incredible, and we would not have been as successful in achieving our goals without their help. So Jason, Marnie, Heather, Kevin, Jamie, Greg, and Derek, whether it was our vision to create a video or our vision for what the website, when it came to student trustee election and the voting process, they were always more than willing to help turn our vision into reality and to provide guidance and support, and they were such an amazing group of people to work with. I also want to thank Susan Milson. I guess we're both retiring this year. As I'm sure many of you know who have worked with her, Susan is such a pleasure to work with, and I can only imagine like how annoying it must be to be swamped with email requests for pizza and to book us a space in the boardroom and to book our travel and hotel accommodations for conferences. But she was always more than willing to help and always so genuinely kind. And really without her, I think this would have been a much more troublesome experience, much more difficult than it had to be, and she just made everything so smooth. So I really, really appreciate Susan. Almost getting to my end of thank yous, I want to thank all of the senior admin team and all of the superintendents in the room. I know that many of you, Muktasid and I, we've emailed you about questions that we might have received from student senators about an item related to your department or about the possibility of putting a student senator representative on a board committee that you oversaw. And you were all always more than willing to give us information to help and to find a way to help us. And I know I can only begin to understand how busy you guys are, and we really, really appreciated it. I know if Muktasid were here, he would thank Superintendent Blackwell for her help with his calculus homework. He really appreciated that, and I think it's going to come in handy for his exam tomorrow. But most importantly, beyond all of your help, you're all such cool people, like genuinely such cool people. I'll never forget a couple board meetings back when we were all in the back room listening to the Yanni versus Laurel discussion. We were all like picking sides and stuff. It was really cool. So you're all incredible. I really respect all the work that you do in terms of helping our students and in making our student trustee experiences memorable, and all of the support and the help that you've given us over the past 2 years. Next, I want to thank Associate Director Bogue and Director Miller. To say that Associate Director Bogue and Director Miller were supportive and helped us achieve our goals is once again a huge understatement. I still don't completely understand how much work Director Miller and Associate Director Bogue do and the range of that work, the breadth of that work. So the fact that we were able to meet with the Associate Director so many times, he made time for us, he answered our emails, helped us out. The fact that Stuart takes time to meet with us, that he took us out for lunch many times to ask how we were doing and to offer support and advice means so much to me because I know how much you guys have to do. I know many times both of you have told us that one of the worst parts of your job is, in a sense, you're removed from students because before you were a teacher, you were in a school, you were an administrator, and now you're at the board office. But I know beyond a doubt that you have had a huge impact on my life and other student trustees' lives in terms of the support that you've given us, and also the decisions that you're making every single day and just the care that you give is also so impactful for every single student in this board, and I really appreciate it, and it would not have been like nearly as enjoyable this year without the mentorship and just the respect and the advice and all the support that you guys gave us. So I really, really appreciate everything. Almost done. I want to thank our trustee mentors, so Donna, Rochelle, and Kelly. You guys were amazing. You guys were the people that we would turn to whenever we were lost, which is so many times because I've realized now that being a student trustee is like a huge learning curve, and I can only imagine how difficult it would be going through, especially the first parts of our term, without the support of people who know the ropes. And you guys were always there for us. If we had questions, you'd answer them. If we wanted advice, you would always be there. You always gave us such good feedback. I really appreciate your honesty. We didn't always agree on everything, but the fact that you would always be honest and give us your true thoughts and constructive criticism as to how we can improve and move forward just means so much to us. And I don't think we would have been anywhere near where we are today without you guys helping us along our journey of helping us grow and helping us become the student trustees that we are. So we really appreciate you guys being along our journey with us. I now want to thank who we consider to be our fourth mentor, which is Gail. I've told Muktasid before, when I grow up, I want to be Gail. Gail, you are amazing. You are so funny, so kind, so hardworking, so knowledgeable, so sassy. I love it. And honestly, Gail, you're amazing. I just remember the countless hours that we spent rewriting the drafts of that student trustee election policy and you trekking all the way to White Oaks and then back to the board office and all of those sorts of things. I remember you giving me advice as to what to wear when I was going on my, I think my TVO interview with Steve Pakin. You were like, red is a great color for you. I was like, thank you, Gail. I remember coming to you when I had questions and when I wanted advice about how things at the board worked, about how to present our election policy, and you were always there, always more than willing to help, and always made us us feel more positive and had a bright side to every situation. So we love you, we appreciate you so much, and you're the best, Gil. Last but not least, I want to thank the people with who this experience would not have been anywhere the same without, and that's the Board of Trustees, all the people around this table. You guys are amazing. I did not realize before I came into this position just how insane this trustee position is, and especially for you guys. Like, some of you, most of you are working another job. Most of you have a family that you're raising. So then in addition to that, I've seen the time and the effort and the dedication that you put to visiting your schools, to talking to students, teachers, and parents, to keeping up to date with what's happening at the board, to reading these giant agenda packages and thinking critically about what questions you're going to ask, and thinking critically about very important decisions that are going to affect students on a day-to-day basis. And just, I think it's so selfless, the work that you do. And I think honestly deserves way more recognition and support from the vast majority of people who just don't know how hard, but honestly how much you guys love what you do and how much it matters to the students on the ground. And for me as a student, not even as a student trustee, it just means so much to see the time and the effort and the dedication that you put into your roles. And it's honestly inspirational. Like, I hope to be as selfless in terms of giving back to the community when I'm older. So thank you. Similar to what I said before, I know that we haven't always agreed on every single issue, but what I really appreciate from you guys is your honesty. You were always honest, and you were always willing to have challenging conversations with us. And you raised the bar for myself and Muqtasid to a point where we really had to be the best versions of ourselves and think critically about what we were bringing forward and make sure it was up to what we truly thought would be best. So I really appreciate your honesty. I really appreciate your openness. I really appreciate your dedication. And I really appreciate the respect that you gave us, even when we disagreed. All the time, you guys are amazing. This experience would not have been the same without you. So that took a long time, longer than I thought, but it's made me realize that there's a lot of things and people that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for all the people I've met and have worked alongside. I'm thankful for all of the challenging and rewarding moments, and I'm thankful for everything that we've been able to accomplish together for the students of Halton and Ontario. And whenever I get asked what it was like being a student trustee, what my experience was, I've always answered and will continue to answer that being a student trustee is a great experience, but being a student trustee at a board like Halton, that's an amazing experience. So thank you so much.
I usually hate following Stuart, but oh my gosh. So, Dasha, you have left an indelible presence in this board, and you encompass all the values, you and Muqtasid, that we hope for every student within the board. You've made us proud within the board and well beyond. And we expect big things from you guys. And I have no doubt that we will be seeing you again. So I'm just keeping this short because I'm trying to keep it together. But we do have, where did I put it? We do have just a small token, very small token of our appreciation for everything you've done. Yes, Mukta said we have, we're going to arrange to get that to you either through Trustee Daniele or in another way. So Director Miller would like to say something.
I too will be brief. I just want to say, Dasha, and you're a remarkable young woman, and Mukta said you're a remarkable young man. And you make us all very, very proud, all the people on the outside who devoted their lives to working in education, whether have been in classrooms or whether we're working in facilities or business services or whatever. It's so reassuring. I think we're living in very troubled times. It's so reassuring for all of us who have devoted to education to see the products of that education. And it's two remarkable young people like you and Muktasid. And we have very high expectations that we will read about you changing things for the better once you get to the ripe old age of 21, 22, something like that. But on a personal note, both Dasha and Muktasid, I have very much enjoyed our friendship and our company this year. It's been great. We've had some great conversations, and you make me laugh a lot, and I hope I made you guys laugh a wee bit. But thank you for everything you've done for the board, and most importantly, what you've done for all the students. I also want to thank all the trustees around the table for, I know this is, in some boards it doesn't work quite so well, but I want to thank all the trustees for embracing the student trustees. It's very reassuring to see, and in particular, Dasha touched on it when she talked about the respect that you show the student trustees, and you show that by those challenging conversations, and not in any kind of patronizing way. You treat our student trustees with the intellect and the respect that they deserve, and it's, for me as a director, I'm so proud to look around and say, you know, our student trustees are trustees. And that's as a result of the people that work around the table with them. So thank you to everybody. And Dasha, Muktasid, good luck. And let's hear how you're doing later on. Thanks.
Kelly would like to say something. Trustee Amos.
It's tough to follow up all those wonderful speeches, especially Trustee Metropolitansky. But I just like to say how much I've been probably the longest serving trustee at the board since 2000, and I have been touched by each student trustee. And I would say that this group, these two young people, Trustee Mansour and Trustee Metropolitansky, have probably touched me the most. I think they are leaving a legacy of not just student voice, but change. And they have brought an air into this board that has inspired me, and I know my fellow trustees, and has made us more aware of students, even though we think we know. You brought their perspective in through the use of Student Senate by other means, and I just want to thank you for all that you have done for the position, for this board, for the students, and for us, because you have made a difference, and I know you're both going to do amazing things in the future and to keep in touch. One of the best things is when the student trustees come back and tell us what they're doing, and we can see how their time at Halton has affected them and how it's affected us and what they're now doing in their next steps. So I just like to congratulate both of you and thank you for all that you have done.
Okay, so now we are going to get back to business. We're up to our consent agenda items. Do we have any consent agenda items that require discussion at all? Okay, nobody's saying anything. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for June 20th, 2018. Moved by Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Is there any discussion at all about the consent agenda items? Seeing none. Okay, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are up to our ratification action items. Vice Chair Al Harrison, do we have any items from private session that require approval?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have 4 items. So the first one, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolutions from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session, June 20, 2018, respecting negotiations. and that is report 18098, and I so move.
Do we have a seconder? Trustee Collard? And is there any discussion at all? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And your next item?
Yes. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolutions from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session, June 20, 2018, respecting property matters, report 18099, and I so move.
And Trustee Graves, would you like to second that? Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Item 3, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolutions from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session June 20, 2018, respecting property matters. That's report 18100, and I so move.
And I'd like to second that. Is that possible? Yep. Okay, is there any discussion at all? Seeing none. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay, and item 4, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session June 20th, 2018, respecting legal matters, and I so move.
May I have a seconder? Oh, Trustee Collard. Is there any discussion at all? Oops, went too far. That was Trustee Collard. Okay, all those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 6 action items for this evening, and we're going to start off with one that was adjusted from, it was the last action items becoming the first action item. Was number 426, Education Development Charge Bylaw. Superintendent Veerman and Manager Renzella. Also welcoming Brad Teichman and Jack Amendolia. Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Before you this evening is a report recommending that the board approve the 2018 Education Development Charges Bylaw for the Halton District School Board. As trustees are aware, in order for the board to proceed with the approval of the bylaw, we require Ministry of Education approval of the background study. We were anticipating approval from the ministry prior to this meeting, and unfortunately we have not received it. I'd like to now defer this to our consultant, Jack Amendolia from Watson & Associates, to kind of bring the trustees up to speed.
Thanks, Mr. Renzella, and thanks to the board for having me here tonight. So as was mentioned by Mr. Renzella, tonight's meeting was originally supposed to be, for the purpose with regard to EDCs, was supposed to be for the Board of Trustees to consider bylaw passage. As was mentioned tonight, and as we've talked about previously, one of the requirements that must be met prior to a Board of Trustees being able to lawfully pass a new education development charge bylaw is that the background study that's prepared by your consultant, by myself, has to be approved by the Minister of Education. So we talked at previous meetings about certain requirements that the board must meet prior to bylaw passage. The board has met all of the requirements save that approval by the Ministry of Education. And I think to provide a little bit of context to the board tonight, I'm just going to go quickly through what that review process entailed and just to ensure the Board of Trustees and the public that the requirements were met by the board. So as part of that requirement to review the background study, we have to submit that background study to the Ministry of Education. They ask for 40 business days prior to when the board would actually consider bylaw passage. We exceeded that requirement. We gave them 42 business days to review the bylaw or to review the background study prior to the board's consideration of bylaw passage. During that review process, the consultant, myself, was in constant communication with the ministry just to ensure that there weren't any questions or issues or questions of clarification or methodology. We weren't notified at any time during that process that there were any issues with the background study or with the assumptions contained in the background study that ultimately the ministry has to accept and review. We first heard back from the ministry about a week, I think it was May 8th, about a week before this board was to originally consider passage of the bylaw. And we were told at that time that the ministry would not be providing approvals to any school board with regard to background study for education development charges prior to the provincial election. The correspondence that we received was that education development charges had become a little bit of a politically sensitive matter and that the ministry did not want to approve any studies prior to the provincial election. We were assured at that time, myself, board staff, Director Miller as well, were assured by the Ministry Capital Services branch that basically the requirements for passage or for approval were there, and that after the election, the board would receive the necessary approvals and the necessary letter to pass the bylaw. After the June 7th election, we were in touch with the Ministry of Education the Monday immediately following the provincial election. We were notified at that time that Capital Services branch would be meeting with the Assistant Deputy Minister's office Wednesday, so a week ago today, and that we should have our approval shortly thereafter. We didn't hear any word after that Wednesday meeting. We were called, myself and the boards as well, were notified on Friday around 11, I think, that until a new cabinet was sworn in and until that Minister of Education could be briefed on education development charges, that no approvals or no letter would be forthcoming to the board. And as I mentioned previous, that is a condition that the board must meet prior to bylaw passage. I'm just going to add to that in terms of, I sort of went through the review process and what we were supposed to do. And like I said, I want the board and the public to be confident that we exceeded what we were supposed to do in terms of those legislative requirements. Knowing that, in addition to that, knowing that we were bumping up against this provincial election when we started back in December, January, myself, Mr. Renzella, we went out of our way to notify the ministry just to make them aware that they would be getting a background study in the next several months, that the boards were looking at May passage dates. And we just wanted to be a little bit extra proactive, I guess you can say, knowing that there might be issues. And we were again assured at that time that the provincial election would not impact the approval. So we went along this process, eyes wide open, in constant communication with the ministry, and we received, no indication from, basically December 2017, January 2018, that this would become an issue. Like I mentioned, the first we heard was May 8th, the week prior to, I think May 8th was the scheduled meeting, so the week before that was the first indication we heard that there would be any issues. But even at that time, again, we were assured that it was just a timing thing at this point, which is why we moved that consideration of passage initially to tonight, because we thought that after the election we would have that approval. So this is where we're at now. So like I said, we don't have that approval. As the trustees were made aware, I think at the last public meeting, today was your last day to approve the bylaw because it goes into effect 5 days after the board is able to pass that bylaw, which would take us to, I think, this Saturday or Sunday, which would make that new bylaw, if passed, into effect Monday. The current bylaw expires on Saturday, I believe. So Sunday, yeah. So because the board is unable to pass tonight, that bylaw is going to lapse. And just quickly, just so there's an understanding of what the possible implications may be when that bylaw passes. So the board now relies on EDC revenues, obviously, to buy new school sites, to prepare those new school sites as well. In addition, the board already has outstanding commitments for sites that have been purchased in the past. So that EDC revenue doesn't only go towards buying future sites, but it's also there to service existing debt that the board incurs from past EDC purchases. And obviously without that EDC revenue coming in, it severely limits the board's ability to buy sites to service that existing debt. And as the trustees are aware that we've talked about over the last several years, this board also has an EDC deficit existing in its reserve fund. Because of the amendments we've made over the last 3 or 4 years to the EDC reserve fund, we've done very well, or the board has done very well at bringing that deficit down from, I think it was 55 million in 2013 to under 30 million. I think even a little bit less than that in this current bylaw. Obviously, with that revenue not existing, and we don't know for what period of time that's going to be. Not only, like I said, does that impact your ability to buy, but obviously that EDC deficit is now going to rise without EDC revenues coming in. So that's it from my end. I don't know if Mr. Teichman has anything to discuss with regards to the legal implications, but the three of us are also here to answer any questions that the trustees may have.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Jack. To all trustees, this is a significant issue for the board as it impedes our ability to purchase new properties and to service our deficit around the EDCs. And I can't underestimate the significance of this in terms of our ability to move forward. As everyone knows, we are a growing board, particularly in North Oakville and in Milton, where we need to purchase sites, we need to build new schools, and this will impede seriously our ability to purchase those sites and do those necessary and to service the deficit, as I've said. So I don't know if I would characterize this as a crisis for the board. I don't think it's that severe, but it is a significant issue that needs to be addressed somehow to address the growing populations of the parts of this board. So I'll just leave it at that and then leave it open for trustees.
Okay, so the item we have in front of us is this recommendation can't pass tonight. So there's no point. This is turned into an information item. And the information that's coming to us personally makes me angry. I can't believe that the Ministry of Education would deprive us of the ability to purchase land and to have us drain our coffers on what feels like for political reasons, on a whim. We had agreements in place with the ministry. We had an understanding in place that we would be able to continue. We are heading into the construction season. We are going to be losing millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And this could delay schools. Could this affect our classrooms? Yes. I call this a crisis myself. I am upset. And I know that some letters were written to the deputy minister with some information. And I'm wondering if it needs to go beyond that. But I think we're growing speakers list here, so I should let people to have a say, but go ahead, Director Miller, before we get started with that.
Through your chair, events to all trustees and the public, among the our legal counsel, Jack and Dom, and our Halton Catholic District School Board, which finds themselves in exactly the same situation as we are in. We wrote a joint letter and addressed it to the Deputy Minister and CC'd the Assistant Deputy Ministers and so on. What we did in that letter was outline the challenges that this will create for the board and the significance of the bylaw not passing financially to the board. And we've addressed that to the Deputy Minister and so on. So, thank you.
I'm going to go to the speakers list. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I'm hearing that the new government may not be sworn in until very late July, which would put us nearly 6 weeks from now. So at the daily cost of how much, and how much do we think that this may end up costing us if we have to wait 6 weeks? Because this might not be the very first thing that the new Minister of Education wants to look at on day one. So what are we thinking this is going to cost us, and what are our next steps?
Thanks, and that's a great question. So just to add to that, yeah, what we were told is obviously after the cabinet is sworn in, there has to be a period where Capital Services still has to debrief the minister probably before making any decisions. So you're quite right in that it's probably not going to be cabinet sworn in and we're going to get an approval, 5 minutes later. In terms of what that loss could potentially be, so what I did is I looked at what our building permit estimates were according to the EDC forecast, and then what your proposed charge was going to be if the board passed that new bylaw. So based on those numbers, the Halton District School Board, so just your board, stands to lose approximately $127,000 per day. So if that went a month, it's about $2.8 million in a month. If it went 6 weeks, another 1.5, almost 1.4 million on top of that. So you're looking at probably about a $4.5 million loss if you're looking at about 6 weeks. Both boards combined, you're looking at a monthly loss of about $5 million.
So then what are the next steps that this board can take?
So it's a little bit of a tough question. I'll do my best in terms of giving some possible options. But I think as has been mentioned, this is something that is unprecedented. We've not had, or personally, I've never had a study not get approved, and I'm not aware of a board that's had a bylaw lapse because a study hasn't gotten approved. And the legislation, perhaps Mr. Teichman can speak to it a little bit after I do, but the legislation isn't clear on circumstances in terms of what we're about to deal with and how we're supposed to deal with them. So from a practical sense, in terms of, as your EDC consultant, if I was calculating the charge again next year, let's say, if we did an amendment, I would do everything possible. So let's say that, we lost this $2.5 million that we're talking about for argument's sake. As far as I'm concerned, and as far, I think, as Brad is concerned, I don't want to speak for him, we consider those EDC eligible growth related costs. So we would try to put those back into the study and say, hey, the board has lost out on these funds. We consider them, like I said, EDC eligible costs. The reserve fund should account for it. So that's, I think, what we would try to do. As the trustees are aware, BUILD, which is the development organization that we've talked about, their consultant is extremely well versed in analyzing the education development charges, the legislation surrounding it. The honest answer is we're not sure whether lawfully those are EDC eligible costs. I don't think the legislation is clear. So what might happen is that we put those in, BUILD either says, or anyone from the public says, hey, we agree with those, that sounds reasonable, and we move along. What is probably more likely to happen is someone looks at that and says, hey, I don't agree that those are EDC eligible costs, challenges us and appeals the bylaw. We go to the Ontario Municipal Board, which is now the local planning and appeal tribunal. And ultimately, it's probably something that I would foresee that gets decided in the courts or at the OMB and then becomes case law. because I'm not even sure the ministry has the wherewithal or the authority to tell us what to do in this situation. The other thing I would add to that is, in my personal conversation with the Director of Capital Services Branch, I obviously made these concerns clear to him, and he understood those concerns. What a possible, or what a reply was, is that the board could consider, so let's say we lost this money, the board had to go and get capital priority funding to build that new school. He said the board can always add that land purchase price, as boards without EDCs do, to get funded through the ministry's capital services branch for that land cost. So again, the answer, and in talking with staff about that, is that avenue doesn't exist right now. There isn't an application out there they're not accepting capital priority business cases at this time. So in any event, those are things that might happen down the road, but we don't have a clear definitive answer that yes, absolutely, some way you're going to get those funds. The answer is a bit, we don't know. We're definitely going to try, but we don't know what that outcome is ultimately going to be.
Thank you. May I have a small follow-up?
As long as it's small.
Is there any retroactivity to when we finally enact the bylaw? Can we go retroactive to when we would have?
Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Yes. The answer is no. We don't think we could go back. So because the building permits during the period where there is no bylaws, the building permits will be issued, and there's no ability to really go after those homeowners who escape paying just through those fortuitous circumstances that there was no bylaw at the time. So there's a good chance the $2.8 million, if it extends a month, or $4.5 million 6 weeks, it's a good chance it's lost forever. That's, so unfortunately.
Unfortunately, and thank you for your answer.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I don't even know what to say. I'm just so upset by this whole thing because we had verbal promises from the ministry that this would pass. We've done all our due diligence and everything that we needed to do, and we're now basically, our hands are tied, and so what? I mean, basically that's what we're being told. So I do think we need to do something, though, because I just heard that we have, we cannot be retroactive. I don't know if we have any recourse to recover anything from the past, but as the lowest funded English public school board, and I know our coterminous board is in the same situation, and they're also one of the lowest funded school boards, and we're also one of the only school boards that's actually growing and needs this money to purchase land, to build schools. And so it's putting us between a rock and a hard place, and no one's going to rescue us. That's what it feels like. So I think that we need to direct our chair to write a letter to the minister and the ministry, and we need to have letters go out to all of our municipal partners, including Halton and all the separate entities, Oakville, Burlington, Halton Hills, and Milton. I think that we need to be talking to our new MPPs. I think we're going to have to mount a campaign and make them aware of the serious nature of this event, because they are penalizing us for something that we haven't had any control over, and basically we were promised on. And I mean, sorry, I'm ranting, but it upsets me, the fact that we're being told that, so what, so long, whatever. I mean, and I appreciate all the hard work that you put in on our behalf to try and move this along, and to have the flow of information to us so that we are aware of what's going on. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. I just think that we're going to have to step up now and make it a political campaign, because obviously that's where it's going to land. The ministry staff, our hands are tied until the election, until the new government's sworn in, whenever that may happen, anywhere from June 29th to the end of July. And I'm sure that whatever is happening with the Minister of Education, whoever it may be, that won't be on their first thing on their priority list. So if I need to make a motion, I will, but I'll craft something. But we need to have something happen.
It feels like a motion is happening right now. So would somebody second this potential motion? Trustee Oliver, thank you. Why don't we craft something right now? I would suggest, though, that we also include the Halton Catholic District School Board in our letter as a joint partner.
I'm good with that. And I also, can I just follow up? I would like to ask Mr. Amendolia and Mr. Teichman, is there any recourse if we are severely penalized and we lose the $4.5 million a month of recourse to go after the government because of what they've done to us? I mean, I know it's a public entity and we're a public entity and we're funded by them, but I mean, those dollars will still be recovered, won't they, by somebody? Or is that just gone if the municipalities don't collect them?
I'll answer that last part. From an EDC perspective, once, as Mr. Teichman mentioned, once the permit is issued, we can't retroactively go back. So an EDC is basically looking at permits because it's looking at students that are coming from future growth, but it doesn't allow us the ability to go back and charge or collect for any permits or by virtue students that have already been issued, I guess is the best way to say it. So from an EDC collection or analysis point of view, I think that'd be difficult, but I'll let Mr. Teichman answer the legal question in terms of being able to go after the ministry for lost funds.
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer that. I'm not sure, I'm not being presumptuous, but I'm not sure we should do that in public session.
I'm frustrated, but
I understand.
I'm totally frustrated that we're being put into this position. So I'll leave that piece and focus on the motion that we're going to craft to try and make a political statement so that we can maybe get some response in that perspective. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Director Miller?
Just very quickly, through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Amos, you mentioned about conversations with the ministry. In addition to the conversations that our staff and our consultants have had with the ministry, both the director of the Halton Catholic and myself have had conversations and were given the same assurances that our staff and consultants were given that after the election that the EDCs would be passed. So we both had those conversations, and we both also received phone calls on Friday of last week to tell us that they would not be passed until a government and a Minister of Education were sworn in and brought up to speed.
Okay, so for a motion, I've been scratching things down here, and you can let me know if it's okay. Direct the chair to write a joint letter with the Halton Catholic District School Board to all levels of government and newly elected MPPs and Premier Designate Floored to implore the Ministry of Education to pass the background study in order for both boards to pass their new EDC bylaw.
I would use the whole word.
Oh, okay, educational development charges. I think we do need to go on beyond this, but I think this is a good motion to start. Maybe we could have a second motion.
I do think that's a good place to start, but I also think we need to have conversations as well. The letter is a great place to start.
Okay, so why don't we put this on the table and as a first step, and then we'll vote on that, and then we'll go back to having more conversations and potentially more action. Is that okay with everybody? Yes, I'm seeing. Okay. So, Gail, what should we
do? Chair Gerbens, while we're waiting, can I ask, I believe there should be a second motion about maybe inviting the newly elected MPPs here for a conversation and maybe some conversations with our municipal partners as well.
Okay, we'll make that a second motion. We'll vote on this one first.
speakers list first.
I might have a friendly amendment to this motion if there's going to be discussion.
What would you like to?
I was just wondering if we might want to include our outgoing MPPs on the letter as well. I don't know. It's such an odd situation. I don't know how much pull they have right now, but I think it's fair game to give them a heads up, because honestly, this, I don't think they're going to want this to be their legacy as well. It did and sort of happen on their watch, so I think it'd be fair game to include them.
Okay, are you happy with that? Yes. Okay. So, Gil, yeah, I'm just saying, have you kind of caught all that for the minutes?
Yes, but I'm going to wait for your
Okay,
scribble.
thank you. All those in favor? Shall we go back to the speakers list then? Yes. Okay, Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and I will make the next step in those motions after my questions. So what I've heard you say is that this is an unprecedented situation. So that puts us in a unique spot. So, and the theory behind EDCs is that growth funds growth. Other scenarios that we've talked about are general tax base funding, what we need to do to manage our student growth and the resulting need for new schools. So my question is along that vein. Can the board continue to purchase properties without an EDC bylaw in place? Because we do have some rather urgent needs in that regard. If so, how and what are those impacts?
Okay, it's difficult to answer, but the question you asked, can the board purchase sites without an EDC bylaw? So the answer, well, it's yes and no. It's yes, the board could do that, but it will not have the money to pay for the site. So effectively, it's no. The board has the ability to borrow money to buy school sites. Under the Education Act, the school board can borrow money to fund permanent improvements. Permanent improvements are defined to include school sites. So the board could go out, borrow money to buy a school site, because right now there is no money in the EDC account. It's empty. It's in a deficit position. Jack said approximately $30 million. So there's no money there. So the board would have to go out, borrow money, but the board has no income stream absent EDCs to pay whoever the lender is, whoever the board's financial institution is, to pay back the loan. So it's unlikely the board would be able to secure financing without having an income stream to retire the debt. So the answer is there's legal authority for the board to borrow money, buy a site, but you won't be able to, because no lender will advance the funds without in my humble opinion, without EDCs.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up and then put a subsequent motion on the floor. So you basically said we're stuck, just to summarize. And in that regard, I just wanted to advance the thoughts from the earlier motion and move that in addition to the letter that we simultaneously invite newly elected MPPs as well as our municipal partners to a conversation to attempt to remedy the issue in a timely manner. So that's the motion. My footnote is, because as of this weekend, there ain't no cash coming in to do these things.
Speaker, use your mic.
So in essence, as of midnight tonight, the board will be in a position where the bylaw will lapse, but you'll still be able to collect until Friday.
A friendly amendment? Go
Yes,
ahead, Trustee Collard.
to invite the Catholic Board to participate in that meeting.
Thank you.
Clarification?
Yeah, so a clarification, which is separate from my other questions coming. So if somebody has pulled a building permit this week, then the liability is created, and whether or not municipalities actually got the money in their hands or not, they can still collect it. But what we're saying is any new building permits issued from Monday onwards, the liability would not trigger because there's no bylaw to create the liability. So there's no requirement for the municipality to collect those development charges, both the Catholic Board and the Public Board, that they would still be collecting their municipal development charges. Right, so at some point, I suppose somebody, to be fair, should tell the 4 municipalities that the bylaw can't be passed today? Or does that letter get mailed?
We've informed, both boards informed the municipalities today. We were hoping maybe for a Hail Mary from the province. It didn't arrive, so we sent it out late this afternoon to all 4 municipalities.
Oh, Trustee Amos, you're seconding the motion. Vice Chair Al Harrison, I just want to kind of clarify because my notes are crappy here. So, so you'd like, the motion is that the Halton District School Board invite the Halton Catholic School Board to have a joint meeting with current Halton MPPs, outgoing Halton MPPs, and MPP designates for the region to participate in a meeting to discuss the to discuss a timely solution to our EDC crisis. And we'll write out educational development charges. Oh, and to include the municipalities as well. Okay, and the region. Okay, and we have a seconder, Trustee Amos. Okay, and is there? Oh, I have the ability here. So I've saved the speakers list. We have new capabilities on this thing. So if anybody wants to discuss anything to do with this motion right now, don't worry, I can go back to the last list. Trustee Harvey Hope. Does anybody have anything that they want to discuss with this motion specifically? No? Okay, then I'll just go back to the other list. Okay, and then we're just going to vote then. Oh, geez. EDC meeting, it's already in there. Thank you, Manager Gortmaker. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, back to our speakers list. On to Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. So, subcommittee that I chair is Finance and Accountability. And the accountability of this is awful. The new government, from what I've read in the news, is asking all the departments to trim their budgets wherever they can. And this is actually going to cost us money that we otherwise could get. In effect, this is transferring dollars from developers and people who are buying new homes and building new businesses back onto the backs of the general revenue taxpayers, because we still need to provide the service. We still need to be buying land. If we get delayed buying land, we could end up than having to house children in portables, which is more expensive than putting them in the permanent building that they were supposed to be having. And the timing is awful because of the way we have been approved for building schools. And yet now, gee, you have approval to buy the school and we'll give you all this money to buy the school, but oh yeah, right, you figure out how to pay for the land. But you have to have the land before we give you final approval. So, oh well, sorry, 2,000, 3,000 kids are sitting in the field somewhere. Well, we once told the Minister of Education that 18 portables later, that if they didn't give us permission to build a school, that would sort of be the situation. And in this case, it's actually, even more so because we won't even have the land to put up tents on. So I'm flabbergasted that it is in a situation where government is supposed to continue. We still give our taxes. We still file things. Everything's supposed to continue. Yes, the government's changed, but this is ridiculous as far as we've done everything we possibly could not to be in this situation, and we're in this situation. So I'm of the firm belief that we should continue to figure out if there's to keep going and figure out a way to finance it. But the problem is that we're likely going to be taking it out of the places that we can't afford to take it out of, because we already use our board and admin governance, which is probably the only envelope we could use, to finance the deficit and spec ed anyway. So now what we're basically saying is, yeah, okay, it's going to have to come out of temporarily out of a certain budget line, which we can't take it out of because we've already taken that small little efficiency and put it into the classroom. So I don't know where that leaves us, but I'm hoping that all of us do our part to tell whoever we can, and we'll see where that goes.
Through you, Chair Drabens, I'll look to Superintendent Veerman as well. The monies that we are talking about, if we are required to purchase lands from our general revenues, is massive amounts of money. It's not small amounts of money. There would have to be significant and serious conversations around the budget, around what we would not be able to do if we had to purchase land. And it would not be, I would suggest, frilly bits around the edge, cutting out lunches or doing any of those things. It would be program loss and changes, radical changes in the way this board operates. There are rules around what we can use for it as well, or what we can use money for in terms of purchases. But Trustee Harvey Holt makes a very good point that to compensate for this loss through the monies from our budget is more than significant. And there would be an absolute direct impact on the students of this board. Superintendent Veerman, do you have anything?
Through the chair, as was presented in the background study, the price of land is anywhere 1.5, et cetera, million per acre. So there are minimum requirements in terms of size for elementary and secondary schools, at least 5 acres for elementary, and I believe up to 15 for secondary. So anybody that can do the math will see that these are large amounts of money. And the ministry, or the Education Act, does provide an opportunity for boards to purchase land through EDCs. And I believe that taking it from the operational budget would not be a prudent decision.
Is it quick? Yeah, quick. I wasn't suggesting we would take the whole piece out. What I meant was, even if we managed to find somebody to lend us the money or use money that we otherwise need in a couple months, the interest costs alone would cause a budget problem. So that was my point. I mean, I know we can't take $30 million or 40, whatever it is. We build 2 schools a year, and we've got 2 high schools on the horizon. So, that this is a big problem.
Trustee Graves.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to our guests. I just wonder if you could reiterate for us what exactly the ministry has told us as to why they are not approving the background study. And what I'm looking for was, because what I'm hearing, and I don't want to put words into my mouth, so I want to be clear, is that it's not that they are finding fault with it at this point in time. It's just that they are not looking at these. And if that's a correct assumption, my next question is how many other boards are in the same position as we are?
Thank you. So the first feedback that we received from the ministry was prior to the provincial election. And at that time, the feedback that I received was that it's a politically, or it has come to their attention that it's a politically sensitive matter and that they would not be approving prior to the election. But as mentioned previously, we should have our approvals after the election. I'll just add to that at that time, I asked a specific question as to what if there's a different government after the election. And again, it was assured to me that this was not, I guess the best way to put it, an elected official, or necessarily the minister's issue at this point, that the ADM office would be able to issue us the approvals that were necessary. So that was what I was told prior to the election. After the election, as I mentioned a little while ago, we were assured, staff, myself, Director Miller as well, were assured that we would be receiving those approvals. I have an email as recent as Tuesday of last week, I think, that said Capital Services was meeting with the ADM office on Wednesday of last week. And again, I don't want to, I can't exactly remember what it was word for word, but to paraphrase, it was something like, meeting is tomorrow, things should be fine, I'll keep you updated. And then, as mentioned, we received word on Friday, and the official response on Friday was simply, no indication with regard to any issues with the background study or the assumptions. It was simply, the feedback was that until a new cabinet was sworn in and until we actually had a new Minister of Education and they were briefed on the matter, no approvals would be forthcoming. In terms of the last part of your question, what other boards are being affected by this? So obviously your counterpart, the Halton Catholic School Board that we presented and had a similar discussion with their trustees last night. In addition, the Toronto Catholic School Board, their bylaw, I believe, expires on June 30th, if I'm not mistaken. So without approvals, they are also going to be in a situation where their bylaw lapses and they will be unable to collect. And then a little bit different, but the two Simcoe boards, so Simcoe Muskoka Catholic and Simcoe County District School Board, they were also intending to pass their bylaws on June 5th of 2018. They received the same feedback that we did in terms of provincial election. They weren't going to get their approvals. I'll note, though, a little bit different with the two Simcoe boards is that although they were hoping to pass in June, their bylaws don't actually expire until October 31st, 2018. So they aren't in the same circumstance in terms of bylaw lapsing and a period of non-collection.
I may have a motion, but I can wait till the other speakers have.
Okay, Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much through the chair. I just wanted to just repeat the data that I think I've collected here tonight, and that is that combined between the Catholic School Board of Halton and the Public School Board in Halton, that there'd be a daily loss of $221,545 or $4.87 million per month. My question is this. Does this reflect just the loss of the EDC, or does it also take into account the rising cost of land every day and the impact that the longer we wait to purchase land, the more it's going to cost?
So the great question. So the 4.87 million that we referred to is simply the loss in revenue that we've estimated that you're going to collect. So that's simply the proposed EDC rate multiplied by the expected number of building permits and non-residential square footage based on land values and the calculation that now we're done in March, I believe. So absolutely. I mean, what we all are aware of with the amendments we've done the last few years is that Even the appraiser would tell you by the time the ink is dry on his appraisal report, it's probably already outdated. In addition to that, I mean, it also doesn't take into account by not having the revenue to pay down existing debt, what's happening to your deficit. It's not taking into account what's happening with interest costs that might not be able to be paid. So that 4.87 million number might be conservative, right? And the other thing that doesn't take into account that I think was mentioned by the chair is that we're entering into a busy building season. We're into a busy building season. And not only that, but if I'm a developer and I know that I'm about to get, about a $10,000 a unit freebie over the next couple of weeks, I'm really going to be rushing to get my building permits in order to apply for that as quick as I can. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's an estimate, and it's based on a projection of building permits. It might be high, it might be low because it's an estimate, but you're quite right in that there were certain factors that weren't even built into that number.
Follow up? Mm-hmm. So if, in fact, the 4.87 million is a conservative loss per month for the reasons that you've stated, and there's a list of them. In fact, I think if the 4.87 million loss per month didn't qualify as a crisis, certainly all of these other things added together makes this an even larger crisis. And I really love to see the word crisis repeatedly in the minutes of tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Harvey Hope.
So one of the other pieces that we didn't touch on when I was explaining about the dollars that were going to come from the people who were going to use the new buildings is that we are actually, in effect, likely to affect all the other boards in the province if we end up having to ask for land inside a capital approvals process, if not for a school that we are about to build, but the next one, because we've got such a deficit that we can't figure out how to pull ourselves out of it. That will take money away from the entire province because we didn't have an EDC bylaw, which everybody is used to paying, is going to pay, was planning on paying, and priced into their properties to pay for, and we end up with a problem. So I guess the question I have is this going to stop us from being ready to open schools for September of 2019 or 2020? I mean, we have timelines, right? So is it going to stop us from functioning?
Well, in terms of the schools opening for 2019, which is the new Northeast Oakville number 2, the site has been purchased. We've allocated the funds and they're there. They're probably part of our deficit because we haven't paid it all back. But the land is purchased. We're moving forward, soon in terms of tendering the project and whatnot. So that is kind of fait accompli. But I want to come back to the point of what you said. It's one of the comments we said to in our joint letter with the Catholic Board is that, the ministry says, well, you could ask for money under the capital priorities for land acquisition. And we said exactly the same thing. You are taking money from the public purse to fund monies that you could have gotten from developers, which doesn't make sense. And the other factor, and the other comment I want to make is that the ministry's land acquisition fund in capital priorities is only $33 million. That's maybe a couple of sites just for our board. So, they don't have that much money in that fund, even though they said, you can apply for that. So anyways, that's my comment. Thank you.
Director Miller.
And through your chair, Rebens, even applying to the Capital Priorities Fund, who knows how long that would take and whether it would be approved. So it's not like you will get the money from the Capital Priorities Fund. It's applied to the Capital Priorities Fund. So there's not enough money. We don't know how long it will take. And to Dom's first point, we'd be taking it from general taxpayers to pay for something that normally developers would be paying for.
Follow up? So I've been around now for a long time, and I lived in a neighborhood that did not have an EDC bylaw. but we managed to actually happen to have bought land 20 years before we needed it. We actually managed to build the school, and we're only probably able to build the school because we had the land. We have an EDC deficit, which I am thrilled to see is down, because when I started, it was in the 55 million range, and it was a concern of risk of what would happen. Now, none of us had ever thought of this particular risk scenario. We were worried about, people stop building houses, people stop asking for building permits, the economy tanking and nobody actually developing any land, versus the economy going gangbusters and us not being able to get the money that we should otherwise get. So we've been prudent. We've been doing our renewals. We've been going to the trouble with all those, jumping through all the hoops, getting all the EDC renewals and the updates and the amendments every year, getting our numbers down, and within a couple months we could rack it up permanently back into a hole, plus the discussion about whether or not we can actually finance the hole, because it's in the time period where we didn't have a bylaw. Yeah, thanks.
So I'll put myself on the list. Since this seems to be a time frame issue, we're going to wait until a new minister is sworn in. Is there any way that we can extend our current bylaw to just kind of Band-Aid over that?
Madam Chair, we looked at that, and the legislation is clear. It's a 5-year maximum term. That term expires this weekend. There's no authority to lawfully extend the term of the bylaw.
Trustee Graves.
Thank you. So what I would really have liked to have happened is the ministry got back to us today with that Hail Mary situation, and we could have done this tonight and passed the bylaw. Given that was not likely to happen in the next few minutes, my next hope is that we start shaking some trees over the next few days and we get some answers within perhaps the next week. So in that ideal case, we could have an emergency board meeting next week and pass our bylaw. So perhaps my question through you, Chair, to our guests is that total pie in the sky thinking, or is a scenario like that possible? And if it is, could someone remind me of the requirements in terms of number of days of notice that we need to give for a special board meeting?
96.
Seems to be 3 days.
3 days, thank you. Okay. Am I being too hopeful here in thinking that something might happen in the next week?
You chaired events, and I'll look to our consultants to help us. Your guess is as good as ours. We have, as a staff, we have taken the actions that we believe are appropriate and contacted the appropriate people. And we are hoping for a response. We have yet to have one. So really don't have anything concrete beyond that to say. I don't know, Jack or Brad or Dom.
I think the only thing I would add to that is yes. I mean, if by chance we did get an approval letter, then what you suggested is correct, that you would have to have a special board meeting. And then I think we've discussed it internally in terms of, would you have to provide notice according to the EDC legislation and whatnot. And our feeling, and Mr. Teichman can jump in if he likes, our feeling is that you wouldn't have to go through the notice period. We've satisfied all the public requirements. There's nothing that if we got the approvals, assuming they're approving the study as is, that would materially change anything that we've provided to the trustees or to the public. So it would likely be an approval, a special board meeting, you pass the bylaw, and it goes into effect 5 days after that.
Get it? One correction.
Go ahead.
It's actually 48 hours notice that we have to give for a public, so 2 days. Not, someone said 96, that's why we said 48. Yeah.
Okay, there's no one else on the speakers list, and I was wondering, perhaps I'd like to make a motion as well. I mean, we've talked about trying to talk directly to MPPs, region, municipalities, Premier Designate Ford. But I think that we should also try and activate the public to put pressure on the government as well. So I'd like to make a motion to produce a press release to help activate the public as advocates. And you'd like to second that? Thank you, Trustee Collard. Is there any discussion on that at all? Okay. Vice Chair L. Harrison.
Thank you. It's a really difficult topic. Members of our communities will be going from 0 to, or we'll be asking them to go from 0 to 100 on a topic that's likely very unfamiliar. So I guess I would just ask that we be really specific in terms of what the implications are. I think the numbers are pretty motivating and chilling, and specifically what we're asking people to do in support of the board and why. So just a few key messages in there. Thanks.
Okay, so everybody understand the motion? Okay, so we'll vote on that then. Oh, we're just waiting for it to appear in our little doohickey here. That's the technical term. Excellent. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Debens. I'd just like to thank our consultant, Mr. Amendolia, our legal counsel, Mr. Teichman, and Dom Renzella. They have worked extremely hard to ensure that we were following the appropriate procedures and the laid out timelines given to us by the ministry, and have done the appropriate follow-ups on time every time, and we have followed procedures, protocols, etc. That they've done everything that's been asked of them and of this board and of the ministry, and the last few days have been, shall we say, quite frenetic in trying to figure out how we deal with this. So on behalf of the senior staff and so on, I'd like to thank the work, and hopefully we get a positive result real soon. So thank you.
On behalf of the trustees, we feel the same way. Thank you so much. Okay, so back to our regular agenda items. The next is number 421, Halton District School Board Network Filtering. So filter, Superintendent Gord Truffin, report 18094 on revised on page 15 of your board package. And I'm just going to read the recommendation to put it on the floor. So be it resolved that the Halton District School Board rescind motion M14-0133 in light of the board's increased efforts to filter pornographic websites and their proxies within all of the Halton District School Board's networks. Seconded by Trustee Reynolds and, moved by Trustee Reynolds, seconded by Trustee Pappen. Any discussion at all? Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the rewording of this motion that makes it clear that we're not rescinding without putting something else in place. You addressed that concern very well. I just want to make sure one more time, when we put this in place, we put it for certain grades because we had delegations from secondary schools that talked about the use of the internet when exploring their own sexuality of not being able to do so at home. Will that interfere with this in any way? It is simply pornography that we're...
Through the chair to trustees, absolutely. As I said last week, this is not filtering resource material, research material, as I indicated, for digital addiction, resources for kids on sexual identity, sexual orientation, gender identity. That's not what this filter does.
Then well done, sir.
Okay, seeing no more speakers. All those in favor? Okay, Trustee Collard is out of the room. And so that passes unanimously with everybody else in the room. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to number 422, 2018-19 draft budget. Superintendent Bierman, report 18090, page 16 of the board package. I'm just going to read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the 2018-2019 Halton District School Board PSAB operating budget in the amount of $763,306,167, and that the Superintendent of Business Services and Treasurer be authorized to proceed with the expenditure of funds as outlined in Appendix A. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the 2018-2019 Halton District School Board PSAB capital budget in the amount of $88,770,131, and that the Superintendent of Business Services and Treasurer be authorized to proceed with the expenditure of funds as outlined in Appendix B. Moved by Trustee Harvey Hope, seconded by Trustee Amos. And there are speakers on the list. Trustee Harvey Hope.
After that long discussion, I would be remiss if I didn't at least officially ask, is there any impediment to us passing this budget with a capital budget that includes the purchase of land that was originally intended to be financed by EDCs? Now, I know we talked about this at Committee of the Whole. The amount in the capital budget is only $3.7 million for land because a lot of the purchases were assumed to be either in this fiscal period or in the one beyond 18-19. So we're going to have to figure out what happens in the 17-18 timeframe. But in your professional opinion, do we have any problem with passing this tonight?
Through the chair, any land that was purchased prior to the EDC bylaw expiring is a valid purchase and can be funded through the EDC. Prior to any subsequent purchase of land, the motion always comes forward to the trustees. So if and when we are in that position, we would bring information forward, and depending on the outcome of the discussions that occurred over the last hour or so, that will determine how we proceed on that. At this point, I believe we still need to go as planned. And again, before any concrete action is taken, it would come to the Board of Trustees for approval, and also with recommendations from legal counsel.
So seeing as how we think we'll probably have an EDC bylaw in 18-19, which starts September 1st, the fallout will likely hit in our August 2018 budget financial statements and or the revised estimates we get in January. So it's not going to affect this pro forma budget. It will affect the actuals at some point.
Through the chair, probably most direct impact at this point in time will be the interest that we accrue for the EDC, but that is charged again against the EDC account. So the majority of the budget, as you know, is operational, which is not impacted by EDC. Again, prior to any further actions being taken that impact the EDC would come forward to the board for discussion for resolution.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just had another question arise when I read this over again, the budget. And that is, with respect to Appendix B, the capital budget, can you comment on how the school renewal and school condition improvement allocations compare to identified needs in those two areas? And I realize you may transfer that over.
Through you, through the chair, through the vice chair. The board has a deferred maintenance backlog. The deferred maintenance backlog of high and urgent needs is around $107 million. So the amount of money that we receive from the ministry to do upgrades and repairs to our buildings is not enough. And I think school boards across Ontario all experience that challenge. As buildings continue to age, the gap between the funding that we receive and what is the high and urgent critical needs or the deferred maintenance backlog needs will continue to grow. It's always been a point of challenge for boards to receive sufficient funding to do all the necessary upgrades and repairs to buildings. And so when you say, is that sufficient money? No, but I don't know whether the ministry would ever be in a position to provide sufficient money to all school boards to meet all the school renewal needs. Fortunately, this board is able to build new schools, to bring new infrastructure into the portfolio. And from my experience in week 5 here, I would say that this board has done a very good job managing and investing into the aging infrastructure to address high and urgent needs, as well as to bring other types of upgrades to the building that may not be considered high and urgent.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And my question stems from, the number of public comments that I get on an ongoing basis in the area that I'm in, which is Southwest Oakville, where, all of the schools are aging. There hasn't been a new school in decades. And basically what these numbers show is that the high and urgent needs, we're receiving less than 25% of what the ministry's own inspections have shown to be our needs. So that's really just the point that I was hoping to get some clarification on, and you provided that. Thank you very much.
Okay, there's no more speakers on the list. So, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Comment?
Of course, Director Miller.
Thank you, through you, Chair Drabens, to Superintendent Veerman and Controller Sweetman, and I don't know what Allison's title is. I've worked with her for years. I don't know where the title is, but she's really, really clever. I want to thank you three and your entire department for not only the preparation of the budget and putting it all together, but in helping the senior team and the Board of Trustees understand it and the implications of the budget. It's highly successful, and most importantly, I think it goes a long way to continue the work of the multi-year plan and support the students of this board. So thank you.
Okay, now we're on to the next item, number 423, long-term accommodation plan. Superintendent Veerman, you're back, and we're looking for Manager Renzella. He'll be in a second, I'm sure. Report 18075, revised, page 68 of your board package, and I'll read the recommendation to get it on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the 2017-2018 Long-Term Accommodation Plan, LTAP, and that staff be directed to submit the updated LTAP to the Ministry of Education, and further that all entities identified on the Community Planning Partnerships notification be advised that the LTAP has been approved, and direct them to the board's website to view the electronic document. Moved by Trustee Pappen, seconded by Trustee Amos. Are there any discussion? Vice Chair Al Harrison. Huh.
TMI. Thank you very much. So I wanted to thank you for this report and all of the great charts and summaries that make it very easy for people to, I think, understand what flows from it in terms of the projections and so on. So I just wanted to ask, and again, this is on behalf of the Southwest Oakville community and others that are looking at accommodation challenges or questions in the next little while. Could you outline your best estimate for the timing of the development of the board's new PAR policy? And I do have a second question after that.
Excellent question. As trustees are aware, the province released earlier this year a new pupil accommodation review guideline that boards will be required to adhere to in terms of amending their policies. However, they said, do not revise your policies until such time there are some ancillary templates that they want to include as part of that, and they will release those templates that set out certain processes with respect to information and how reports are going to look like. And they are to release those in the fall of this year. But as you all are well aware, it's a new government. Things may change. But let's assume things move as previously anticipated. We would receive those changes, those templates, and then we would take some time to review them, from a staff level to develop some policies, and then bring them forth to our committee of the whole, I would assume either the Program and Accommodation Review Committee or Policy and Bylaw to review and kind of vet and discuss and so forth. And then, that, from my experience, it takes some time. So I would not envision any new policies being put forth to the community, to the board-wide, until probably late winter, early spring. Again, it depends on yourselves, because it's your policy that you would need to amend and revise, and how you want to move forward, especially in terms of public consultation. So I don't see anything until next year, in my opinion.
So this feels like Groundhog Day again. This is where we were, in 2015, I believe, with the last iteration of the policies and our communities, expecting that we take action, but not being able to take action because of this policy void piece that we're in again. But do we loop back with those who comment to let them know, comment on the LTAP, to let them know that the final report is posted and how their feedback was used?
Subsequent to the approval of the LTAP this evening, we will be sending out a center voice email to the entire board, advising them that the LTAP has been approved, and that information and questions that have been raised have been addressed in the FAQs, and would direct community members to reference the FAQs if they're so interested to, in terms of responding to their questions. We're not doing it individually, but if they're interested, it's there. And generally speaking, I think what I mentioned last time is that a lot of the questions and comments people made were already addressed in the FAQs, but it appeared that they weren't aware that they were there. So we're going to re-emphasize or emphasize the need for their to review that. I should also point out that we will also be sending out letters to maybe 60 agencies and organizations advising them about the LTAP being approved, and more specifically for their information as part of their capital plans as we're required as community planning policies, and looking at some opportunities for some future partnerships moving forward. So all those that are on our CPP list will be advised that it is there, and the information is there for them to look at what's happening in their community and looking at any opportunities for community planning partnerships.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. The LTAP drives our capital priorities, which we would submit to the municipal or to the provincial government at some point whenever they, again, pull their act together and let us know when we can request them. Has there been any rumors about timing for that? I know last year it was really late, and I'm guessing with a new government starting, it may be late again. Nothing?
We don't anticipate, well, here's the rumor, maybe next year.
Oh, awesome. So, I almost want to make another motion, but I'll leave it for now. But did you want to respond before I?
I don't want to respond. Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Amos, and this is primarily for public digestion. General Manager said capital priorities, the rumor is next year, and this year was a different year, but I think it's important for the public to know that our capital priorities were always submitted by the end of June, and we would hear by September or October. This past year, we did not hear until January or February. A consequence of that is that some schools will be struggling to open on time with those capital priorities, and we may be faced with the similar scenario going forward.
So there's at least one high school which takes 2 years to build, and with it slated to potentially open in 2020, could be driven to 2021 for Oakville, right? And the other elementary schools that are listed there would also be pushed out potentially another year. Maybe in September I'll bring a motion about writing about the capital priorities, but all right, I think it's going to be a very complex thing, because if we don't get the EDCs to purchase the land to do our capital priorities too, we're in, like, again, we're between a rock and a hard place. We can't buy the land, we can't build a school, so where are we going to put all the kids, especially in Milton and in North Oakville, because we need those schools. So I'm quite prepared to go out to my community for them to make noise, and as I'm sure the trustees in Milton will as well, and I'm hoping that our fellow trustees will join on the bandwagon. But I'd just like to thank you for all the hard work that has gone into the LTAP, and for everybody who was involved, all the people, because I would say every year it gets a little bit easier to understand, and I presented it to my family of schools, and they totally understood the pieces of it, and I mean, so you're doing a fantastic job. Keep it up.
Trustee Pappen.
Thank you, through the chair, to Superintendent Berman and Manager Renzella. I wanted to thank you for the comment about accommodation relief at Tuck, and I just wondered if you could explain the last sentence on page 82 of Appendix A regarding the suggestion to move 7 and 8 from Tuck to Nelson. Would that be a similar scenario to what we have at Central and Aldershot? Page 82. Yeah.
Well, that is, again, that's the community feedback from the community. That was a suggestion made. We're not supporting or not supporting any ideas. That's something that would be discussed as part of a boundary review committee and the steering committee as one of the options that could be considered. But it's, that's something from the community, not from planning staff, but it could be discussed as one of the scenarios.
Director Miller?
Through your chair of events to Trustee Pappen and General Manager Renzella. Given that Nelson will be consolidated with Robert Bateman, I think that's a very unlikely scenario that grade 7 and 8s would be moving into Nelson. I mean, the community has suggested it. Whether the suggestion was made in terms of the whole picture of students moving from Robert Bateman to Nelson, I'm not sure, but I don't think we can see of a scenario where that would be, we'd be able to do that. Not at this time, so.
Trustee Graves.
Thank you. My question, or perhaps more of a comment, has to do with the area that's currently undirected that we established when we did the boundary review for Viola Desmond Public School. My suggestion would be that perhaps next year might be a lighter year in terms of boundary reviews, and perhaps that could be done next year. So perhaps through you, Chair, my question to Mr. Renzella is that kind of the plan for that, or will it be later than that?
I think once we get a little closer an understanding of the timing of that new development, because it's still being discussed, it's a big issue in Milton, I understand, because of the density that's being proposed. So I think we still have some time. Notwithstanding, there is going to be a fair number of potential boundary reviews going on next year, including the Milton High School boundary review will start next winter. Yes, because we want to make a decision prior to prior to December or November next year, so parents can start getting their kids ready and understanding what the boundaries are. There'll be the Northeast Oakville number 2 boundary review going on. There's going to be the potential Tuck boundary review going on. So there's a lot of boundary reviews moving forward. So it's something that, if we have an opportunity, we'll take a look at it this year as well. So.
Trustee Amos?
Thank you. Just a quick question. You just mentioned the Oakville Northeast boundary review. I believe it's supposed to start in the fall sometime. Can I give my community a sort of a timeline you were thinking?
Well, as our process is that we would bring back a report in September outlining the boundary reviews to be undertaken. Typically, it's at the first meeting in September for action. Decision is second board meeting, so it probably starting in October, November when we would get the BRC ready together and moving forward with that.
Okay, seeing no more speakers, we shall vote on this. So all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much for all your work. Okay, so now we're up to number 424, Special Education Plan, Superintendent Zonnefeld, Report 18102 and Report 18050, starting on page 85 of your board package. And I'm just going to read the recommendation in. put it on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the Special Education Plan 2018-2019 contingent on approval of the 2018-2019 budget with 2 final amendments as outlined in Report 18102. Moved by Trustee Collard, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Is there any discussion at all? Seeing none. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. That's a record for tonight. Thank you very much, Superintendent Sonnefeld. Okay, next up we have number 425, Operational Plan 2018-19. We have pinch hitting for this evening, Superintendent Salmini and Hunt Gibbons. This is report 18067 on page 89 of the board package. I'm just going to read the recommendation in. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the operational plan for 2018-19 as outlined in report 18067. Moved by Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Daniele. Is there any discussion at all? Seeing none. Oh. There are speakers on the list now. Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you very much to all the senior staff and everyone involved in creating this operational plan. When we first created our multi-year plan, you had to go away and make it work. And you've done an amazing job, all of you. I mean, I really feel that we are living our multi-year plan and we are moving this board forward and doing great things for students. And I'd like to thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this. And I mean, we're not just getting what we've done, but we're moving forward with new exciting things in the future. So thank you to everyone.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you very much. And just going to echo what Trustee Amos said and build on it. One of the areas that I'm really interested in is the supports and the proposals around equity and well-being. I sit on both the Supervised Alternative Learning Committee as well as attending to suspension matters from time to time, and it strikes me that there's a great opportunity in our board to build on the collaborative problem solving and the restorative practices. I believe they're implemented really well in where they are being utilized, and there is an opportunity to expand those practices throughout the board for the benefit of all students and staff. So I'm looking forward to that work in particular.
Thank you. Okay, there are no more questions. So Director Miller is very disappointed that there are no more questions.
Can I ask them some?
No. No. So, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much for all your hard work this evening so far with all our action items for tonight. Okay, so I'm just going to clear all my lists here. Okay, so next is communications to the board, which is normally where we have our student trustee report, but we've already had that, so we're going to be moving forward. And so now we're up to our action items for the September 5th, 2018 meeting. So the first is number 521, correspondence to Minister of Education, Education Financial Issues, Report 18103, submitted by Vice Chair Al Harrison and Trustee Amos on page 124 of your board package. Would one of you like to speak to it? Vice Chair Al Harrison?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So just briefly, I think that this builds on a number of the conversations that we've had at this and our previous board meetings around fair funding, raising awareness, and our current and previous budget cycles and implications that they've had in terms of delivering exemplary services to our communities. So I guess I was inspired by that sort of backdrop to put forward a motion that we let the ministry and minister know of the fair funding infographic, and also outline some of the specific additional concerns that we have related to this current budget cycle, including the negative impact of the cash flow timing, for example, which had a negative impact of $750,000, and that's cumulative on top of all of these other impacts that we've felt over the last number of years. One of the comments that I've had since this went out in draft was that we should also be requesting, again, transparency with respect to the funding formula and the specific assumptions and data used in those allocation calculations. So that's something that I would like to revise and include in here as well, because boards and their supporters, i.e. our communities, should have a clear understanding of how these public funds are being utilized. So really that's at the heart of it, and Trustee Amos and I would be happy to answer questions and entertain amendments and enhancements and so on. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Amos.
Just to follow up on what Vice Chair Al Harrison has said, I think that especially with some of the information that's been shared tonight, it's even more relevant that we need to share with the government our concerns about how we are funded and the fact that we do want that transparency, and it's not, as we had said through the fair funding flyer, about being the lowest funded. It's about being equitably funded throughout for all school boards. So I am happy and I believe that it's important that we make the new Minister of Education aware of our concerns, because with the new government coming in, they're going to be on a steep learning curve. So I believe it's important that we let them know what we think is important.
Trustee Collard?
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to waive the rules to deal with this item this evening. Because of the timing, we wouldn't be getting to this until September, and that we would include Vice Chair Al Harrison's recommended amendment, as well as a timing around sending the letter once a Minister of Education has been named and appointed.
Thanks. Through you, Madam Chair. If that's the will of the group, I'm happy to move forward in that regard. I think we should go for whatever timing is the most strategic, and perhaps striking while the person is new is good. Thanks.
And just to follow up, the reason we thought it might be relevant for September is it would give more opportunity if we needed to add to this, but I'm quite fine with moving it forward.
Okay, so Trustee Amos is willing to second waiving the rules. So we'll deal with that first. Hold on a second. Just clearing the speakers list for a second. Is anybody interested in speaking to waiving of the rules for tonight? No. Okay. I like using these nested lists just in case. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so waiving the rules. Not that one. Oh, yes, that is. Okay. Oh, oops, nope. Sorry, cancel. I picked the wrong one. Oh, no, I did. That's the right one. I'm just getting tired. Okay, go ahead. That passes unanimously. Okay, so we've waived the rules, so now we're back to discussing the actual item. Trustee Graves. Oh, okay, I'll put it on the floor. And you want it to be slightly different, right? So be it resolved that the chair of the board write a letter to the newly appointed Minister of Education sharing the HDSB Fair Finances infographic and outlining additional specific concerns and impacts related to the current budgeting cycle, including but not limited to the negative impact of the new cash flow timing change. Fair funding. Okay, fair funding. Are we all okay with that? Yeah, yes. Okay. And Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. I think the other part of the revision or amendment was going to be requesting transparency in all funding formula assumptions and data used in allocation calculations.
Is that on the end? That just goes on the end? Sure. Did everybody get that? Okay. Okay, so moved by Trustee Al Harrison, Vice Chair Al Harrison, seconded by Trustee Amos. And, okay, Trustee Graves.
So perhaps it's a question of clarification. Would this address both the operational side and the release of capital funds? So the issue that we just heard about in terms of the timing of the requests for capital priorities, for example? Or are those two separate issues?
So I believe that both capital and operations are noted in here, and that we would need to be specific that we are including both areas, because I think that we would be remiss if we didn't mention kind of both of those streams of concern.
Super, as long as you felt it wasn't going to muddle the message. I do think both are important, but it's just, yeah, how you want to present it, I guess, and when. Perhaps it's two separate letters, even. I don't know, but if they're both in here, I'm good with that. If everybody thinks that's okay, that's okay.
Trustee Gray.
Just a little bit of housekeeping, if I may suggest. In the last paragraph, it suggests that we are going to be passing a balanced budget this year. I think we have just done that. So perhaps we could say we have passed a balanced budget as a result of a motion earlier tonight. Yeah.
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 It doesn't change the motion.
It doesn't change the motion. I just wonder if in the report that it could reflect that. Not appropriate? Not appropriate. Thank you. Thank you. I take that advisement.
Okay, point of order. It's 10 o'clock, so we need to have a motion to extend. Trustee Graves, seconded by, Trustee Daniele. Thank you very much. So is there any discussion on extending? Seeing, you weren't expecting this to go after 10. You have lots of faith in us.
No, you wouldn't.
just going to do, are we ready? We're going to do a raising of hands. Nope. Okay, all those in favor, that passes, unanimously, tentatively, but unanimously. Okay, so now, are there any more questions about this motion before we vote on it for the letter writing? Oh, sorry. Are we moving? That was extending the meeting. We actually haven't voted yet on the motion. Okay, so it is late. It is very, very late. Oh. Okay. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to the trustee vacancy report that was distributed to you. Okay, so because, of course, we know Trustee Graves announced that she's leaving us as of July the 20th. We were able to get this report together, and it follows the same path as previous appointments. We have to appoint because the Municipal Elections Act does not allow you to run a by-election after March 31st in a regular election year. And it would also be very expensive at $250,000 to $300,000 to run one. So I'm asking, in order to fulfill the timelines, and here I'm asking if we could please waive the rules. If I could have a motion, Trustee Harvey Hope, seconded by Trustee Pappin. Okay, so we'll waive the rules. Any discussion on waiving the rules at all? I wouldn't think so. Okay, so all those in favor of waiving the rules to deal with this trustee vacancy? Almost said vacation, but it's vacancy. Okay. And we're just waiting on Trustee Pappin. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will read the recommendation to put it on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board fill, by appointment, the vacancy created by the resignation of trustee for Milton Wards 1678. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board adopt the appointment process used to fill the Milton trustee vacancy detailed in report 18104, which is the report in front of you. Moved by Trustee Daniele, seconded by Trustee Gray. Are there any speakers? Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. Just the one concern on the dates. I would assume, because we're doing interviews from July 24th to July 27th, I assume we would try to group them together as much as possible and have them to the beginning of that process, because given that 2 p.m. on July 27th is the deadline for registering for election, it could be quite interesting if we appoint somebody who then is not able to run in the election, or then maybe that's the point. I just wonder about the timing of that, if we would try to ensure that we would be closer to the 24th than the 27th.
We will try. I would like to group, I don't want to be in and out of here all week as well. So if we can group the interviews, that would be lovely. Trustee Graves.
Yeah, just reflecting on when I was appointed, the number 9 applicants will be interviewed by a committee of the whole board in private session. Ours was public. It was video voice recorded. So I was just wondering if this was intentional or if it was meant to be consistent with the last one.
This was taken from the 2012 process, so we need to make a change to the report. Is that's possible? Okay, so that one will instead in number 9 say will be interviewed by Committee of the Whole in public session and video voice recorded. Is that
Honestly,
necessary?
I don't know that that part is necessary, but
I sent you the updated stuff today.
I didn't have any time to go through it today.
Okay, but it is public, and we did video voice record it because it was captured. You could go back and watch all the candidates again. And
Okay. So public session, video voice recorded. We're going to follow the practice from last time. Video recorded. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So we're changing it to Committee of the Whole in public session, video voice recorded. Video recorded.
And that way it doesn't have to be podcasted. It can just be videoed in place and broadcast later if necessary.
Chair of events, and I'm looking to those that were around the last time, particularly Trustee Graves. Was it committee or committee of the whole? The reason I'm asking is because committee of the whole, we're required to have either myself or Associate Director Bolg or a senior member of the staff here, and that's a problematic week for someone to be here.
It was committee.
And it's not necessary. Okay.
Okay, so that we're striking from the report of the whole. So applicants will be interviewed by a committee in public session, which will be videotaped.
No, but we can
You could just
videotape it,
videotape.
but we won't necessarily stream it. Yeah, we can use our own video recording equipment if necessary. Right?
In the summer, that's a problem. The videotaping may be an issue, but I think we can figure something out for that. So we can probably figure something out. I'm looking at those two gentlemen at the back. Are you guys around then? Don't worry, Kevin. We'll figure it out. We'll work with Superintendent Truffin and we'll figure something out for that. So don't worry.
so then as a sort of follow-up to my first comment, there's also no process here. I wonder if it's outlined in our bylaws for what happens in the event of a tie if you have an equal number of trustees, like the process for voting, etc.
It's outlined in some further documentation. That's a pretty detailed.
I've sent, I just today sent all the information from the last process to the chair, and if it comes down to a tie, it goes to a second interview for the two that are tied if it's the top, and then it will be a draw at the end if it's a tie vote.
Okay. Okay then. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. This is to build on our conversation about the timing. I'm glad to see that we are going to be putting this in public session and that we'll video record it, because my concern was, do we need to reflect on whether there's any concern of optics or transparency for doing this process when parents are on vacation, when the constituents are on vacation and maybe not tuning in. And so I just bring it to the board. I'm happy to support it. However, I want to make sure that we have considered that.
Okay, so since it's my report, I'll dive into that a little bit. So we have a 90-day time that we have to fill Trustee Graves' position. And if right now we have still the ability to within the next week or so. I know it's the last week of school, but we have the ability to go through our schools, use Center Voice or something like that to be able to get this information out. And we'll be able to get someone in play. The process takes about a month and a half. So right now we'll be able to give someone, the idea is to have someone basically be able to sort of accept the position August the 1st, and they'd be sworn in on September the 5th. If we wait until Trustee Graves actually vacates her position on the 20th of July, then we are starting the process in the middle of the summer, which is not, I would say, transparent at all. It would be very difficult to get the word out in the deep depths of summer. And so we'd be looking, maybe then the other option is to start this process September the 5th. I wouldn't, the first week of school, I don't know how many people are paying attention at that point, but we would have to get people interested right away, because we would be really butting up against that 90-day limit that we have with getting someone into the position by law. So that's kind of where that's where the thought of starting this process now, or as soon as possible, getting the word out now, going through this process, so we're basically done by the end of July. And it also gives a person the opportunity. We can give them, materials to understand what the position is for the month of August. So at least when they're appointed, they have the ability to start not running, but maybe at a good swagger. Instead of just saying, okay, run, and not knowing anything about what they're getting themselves into. And only potentially, because you never know if the electors, you don't know how the election's going to go. We could be appointing someone who's not going to be elected, and then they could be in their position if we waited until that last moment for a month and a bit. And I don't know if people read into that's even worth them coming out. So my thought was this was the best time. Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for pulling this report together, and to everybody who's provided the background information from the last two processes. I think that we're lucky to be able to build on those. In item 2, I think we're advertising in the Milton News Media.
Oh, yes.
So that was just I'm curious about if we get no applicants, what happens, but that might just be academic, because I'm hoping that we're going to get a lot. And then lastly, in reviewing the advertisements from the previous round, I was wondering whether we should also include an equity statement, something along the lines of if accommodations are needed for interview processes, something similar to what I think we do when we're hiring staff, just so that we are inclusive in our process.
Can the communication staff help us with that?
Executive Officer McFadden will help you with that.
Thank you. Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much. With the change that we made in item number 9 about being in public session, we need to take out the first 6 words in number 10, while interviews are conducted in private session. That's no longer required. It can just start with names and addresses will be recorded. And my second question was, there's nothing on here about the voting process, and I do believe the last time we had, just as we do with our chair and vice chair, we have a secret ballot, even though it's a public process. I just want to confirm that.
Can I
I went back through my files today and I found all the information which I have forwarded to them. I didn't realize, because I wasn't asked that the report was coming out till, so I just forwarded.
Okay, do you have any follow-up or anything, Trustee Daniele, while your time is ticking? Okay, we have exhausted our list here. So we are going to vote. All in favor?
It sounds like it.
Keep in mind that the report is in
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to read that again. We've already voted and everything, except for, I don't know why it's not. Anyways, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board fill by appointment the vacancy created by the resignation of trustee for Milton wards 1678. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board adopt the appointment process to fill the Milton trustee vacancy detailed in the revised report 18104. Okay. So we've already voted, but it's not showing up there. It's everybody's got a check mark. It's very odd. Oh, Joanna hadn't voted. Oh, she must be off the end. Okay. Okay. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Okay, next we're up to number 5.4, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion at this point? Seeing nothing. Okay, next is the director's report.
Thank you, Chair DeBence. On a very weighty evening, I've only got good news to share this evening, and I'm going to try to speak as fast as Trustee Metropolansky can speak. Eco-school certification. We have had 47 schools certified. I won't name the schools at this point. We have 11 silver, 26 gold, and 10 platinum. That's pretty cool. We also have, there's a certification process for healthy schools, and I'm very happy to report that out of 72 boards in Ontario, 8.5% of those that have been certified come from the Halton District School Board, which is a pretty significant number. And I'll quickly read the schools. I'm going to read them really quickly so you can hear the schools in your area. Bruce T. Gold R. Bruce T. Lindley, Captain R. Wilson, Clarksdale Public School, Forest Trail, Kings Road, Milton District, Nelson High School, Oakwood Public School, Palermo Public School, Sunningdale Public School, T.A. Blakelock High School, and Tom Thompson Public School. Our silver medals are E.J. James, Pine Grove, Pine View, Tecumseh, Tigerjeet Singh, and White Oak Secondary School. And bronze goes to Bruce Trail and Ryerson Public Schools. But that's pretty cool. 8.5% of the entire province is in Halton. So we're not 8.5% of the population of this province by any stretch of the imagination. And the last one is about one of our teachers. I don't know if many of you have heard of a band called the Arkells. Anyway, they dropped into Milton District High School the other day to pay homage to a fantastic music teacher named Christopher Carson Fisher. And I'm going to turn over to Superintendent Newton to add some comments about him.
Yeah, Christopher Carson Foster is an amazing, it's late at night, I know, Stuart, is an amazing instructor. And so the Argyles have a competition throughout Canada where they call it the People's Champ Award, and you can nominate your teacher in public education. Since they're products of public education, they believe that that's their way of giving back. And so they were really excited to go in, and they stayed for the day and played with the kids in the music program. Christopher does a lot of work in our feeder schools as well, and not just when it's time to promote public education to please come to Milton District High School, but does a lot of concerts in the park and a lot of concerts with his students throughout the region. And he's just a dynamic person, so he's a great role model for kids. Thank you.
The last item is tomorrow night's retirement dinner. There are 446 retirees. That's a lot of capacity going out the building, but we're out of the buildings. But we're totally confident that those replacements and younger people that have come in will be able to fill that void. Maybe not right away, because that's a lot of capacity going at the one time, but certainly with the energy that this has shown over the years, this board, that'll be done. And the final comment I would like to say is this. This comment that I was going to say today changed as of Friday afternoon, because I was going to wish you all have a great summer on this, the last board meeting of the summer. But I'm very hopeful that we can have another board meeting very, very soon to sort out our EDC issue. And so we'll see each other again very soon, I hope.
Thank you, Director Miller. So next is communications from the chair, and I have two things. The first is our fair funding infographic. There's been a bunch of feedback and requests for more information about what trustees have done to address this directly with the Ministry of Education and the government. So I have been collecting information, and I've sent it on to some people that have requested it, but I just thought that it would be important to put it here as well. I'm only going to give sort of, well, since the board chair is the person that makes direct contact to political figures generally in the Ministry of Education, we only have information going back to about 2009 right now. But since that time, we have met in joint meetings with our local MPPs on several occasions to speak directly to the board funding shortfalls. We met in the fall of 2014. We met in the fall of 2015. Chair Collard in 2013 and Chair Amos also in succeeding years, and myself this year have all presented at budget consultations and have spoke directly with the Minister of Education during our times in office on the topic. Trustees have also brought up the formula informally at every occasion possible, and the Ontario Public School Boards Association has also worked tirelessly on behalf of all publicly funded boards to get clarity on this. I've reconstructed a timeline, and I would be happy to share it with anybody, any media outlet or anything that would like more information. And then, as this is the final, supposed to be the final regular, well, it's the final regular board meeting of the Halton District School Board. I'm sure you feel, as I do, that this year has just flown by, like just gone. And as per the operational plan, we have accomplished so much with regards to our plan for the system. And as per the LTAP that we passed tonight, we take a glimpse into our future as well. Around the larger table, we have said goodbye to a long-standing superintendent and friend, and welcomed a new one into our fold, who is fitting in as if she was always been there. We will be saying goodbye to our colleague, Trustee Graves, as she heads out on her life-changing adventure in a few short weeks. Right now, many students are feverishly studying for exams or completing summative activities in our secondary schools, and we wish them all well. There are also students graduating from one stage to another within our system, be it to grade 1, middle school, or high school, and it's a fun and exciting time for them. We will be welcoming new faces in September with bright eyes and insatiable curiosity in our hundreds of junior kindergarten classes across the region. And finally, for those leaving the Halton District School Board on the brink of graduation, we honor you, and we want to wish you all the best in your choice of future endeavors. And I just want to say that it has been a pleasure in the time that I've been chair and beyond, when I was trustee before that, to work with everybody around the table. And I'm sure that next year will be absolutely amazing. So we'll now move on to committee reports. Do we have any? Seeing none. So now we are on to questions and comments from trustees. Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say very briefly, I had the chance to attend the special athletes track and field or track event today, and I know several of the trustees were also there as well, and I was very touched by the special athletes and their performance, and kudos to all of those who put that event together. I also want to thank Director Miller and Superintendent Potter Barrick for attending the Halton Hills celebration of school crossing guards that took place yesterday in Georgetown, and it was a fabulous tribute to the men and women who stand on the corners in all kinds of weather, making sure that not just the children in our community, but all walkers in our community are safe as they cross the intersections. And so thank you very much for being a part of that celebration.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. As we break for the summer, or we might be breaking for the summer, I'm just wondering if the director could kindly update trustees and the public who might be listening what we have spent thus far on the implementation of the Burlington PAR, particularly for the changes that are looking at MM Rogers, Robinson, Nelson, Burlington Central, and Aldershot, just to sort of give us a snapshot of what we've accomplished. And we know that lots will be happening over the summer, but we just sort of want to know where we're at.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Drabens to Trustee Reynolds, thank you for the question. And Superintendent Puccetti and Veerman, I think, will help me with the answer to this, and Blackwell. It's difficult to equate exactly what we've spent on it. We have spent money. We have appointed architects for the Nelson and MM Robinson renovations and upgrades. We've had to pay them. I mean, they haven't obviously taken their full amount at this point because they're still working on the designs and working on with the communities with those designs and working with our staff on those designs. We have put out tenders. We have devoted some staff time, so there's also been money spent on consultants that help us with this. So to give an exact cost would be difficult at this point. I can say that as a reminder to the community, the Ministry of Education gave us $10.9 million for Nelson High School for renovations and $4 million-ish for MM Robinson High School. That's already being earmarked for those schools and will be spent and is to be put in place, and we've already budgeted for all that money, so that money has been transferred, et cetera, and so on. I will turn to Superintendent Veerman and talk about if there's any other costs or anything, or Superintendent Blackwell, and then Superintendent Puccetti can talk about actual construction or stuff that's gone on at this point.
Through the chair, I believe the director has captured a lot of the information. I don't have any other specifics, though certainly I could provide some at a subsequent date.
And through the chair, I would echo those comments. The other piece that we're still waiting on is the moving costs, because that's upcoming in the summer. So there's been a commitment to, we've secured a moving company, and depending on the scope of the work, that will help us define and provide more accurate information in the fall.
just before we go to Superintendent Pichetti, I would also add that the integration work between Pearson and Robinson has assumed some costs around staff release time, those kinds of things, and the students have worked together to integrate along with the communities and the staffs. So that is well in track, and really all that's to occur now is the Pearson kids move over to for September. All that work will then be, it won't be completed because there'll still be transition work to occur, but all that's been done, and there's been money allocated for those as well. So I think that's about it. I'll turn to Maya.
Thank you. Through you, Chair and Vice Chair. At this point, we have tendered for Phase 1 at MMR and awarded that work. So that's going to be starting come June 29th. I believe Nelson is scheduled for tender come July. So that means a fair amount of work has gone into preparing the drawings and documents for Phase 1. So, you know, we're well into getting the word out there that this work is about to start and committing board funds for this work.
In addition, the discussions around moving IB from Bateman to Burlington Central have occurred, including this summer training for some Burlington Central staff, the principal, I believe. Am I correct? September, which will, of course, monies will be spent for that. And you've had regular updates on the Aldershot Secondary School on where that's moved, because I don't want to confine it, because the recommendations in that PAR were not just confined to Robert Bateman and Nelson and and Pearson. There were also the Aldershot and students moving from the IB program moving from Bateman to Burlington Central. There's also an area of Burlington Central that's moving to Nelson as well. Or no, the other way around, sorry. Nelson moving to Burlington Central. So those things are well in hand, and this board has allocated funds for the iSTEM project at Aldershot as well. And that money some of it has been spent, but the bulk of it will soon be spent on other things, including renovations and so on. So I think what's important for the community to understand, the PAR was approved and passed by this board as an entire package. There were various recommendations in there and implications for each of them, but none were out separately. They were not. So it's all tied in together. So.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to an experience I had today and send kudos to the grade 8 teachers at Boyne Public School. It's not one of my schools. I was invited in my capacity with Milton Transitional Housing. And what the teachers had done is for the last 2 months, they've had their students doing what they call innovates, because it was all grade 8, so it was an 8. And it was all different social justice issues that they showcased in a large way today. They all had displays for the younger grades. 3 amazing young ladies contacted me because they were interested in working with the homeless directly in Milton. So in doing so today, they not only presented a wonderful display, they did a TED Talk, and they also raised money for the homeless in our own community. And just listening to them speak and seeing the level of presentations by all of the grade 8s, as I was telling the teachers that I knew tonight was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be one of those long meetings with a very heavy agenda, but it's things like what they're doing that makes that worthwhile. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them, because the job that they did was incredible, and it helped me realize that the future's in really good hands.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. Late last May, that's too late for me. Late in May, there was an event called the Python's Pit, which happened at the Burlington Performing Arts Center. And I'd just like to share that I think it was 9 of the 10 top finalists were all from the Halton District School Board. And the first place winner was Raya Carmenucci, a grade 9 student from White Oaks, who won first place and was awarded $3,500 for her pitch on SmartCane. SmartCane is a reimagined assistive tech device for the visually impaired that enables ease of movement and autonomy. Designed with the user in mind, the SmartCane is a white cane with added features to minimize users' independence and safety. It has an adjustable object detection, GPS functionalities, an emergency button, and location sharing. And she's only in grade 9. Gurjog Gamveer of Abbey Park High School won second place, was awarded $2,500 for his standalone machine, Buy Mine, used to buy and trade cell phones. We're third place and $1,500 going to Sarah Jalal, also from White Oak Secondary School, for her home decor and accessory subscription box service, Corbello. So I just wanted to share some of those exciting results. And I just also wanted to say thank you very much to Trustee Graves. I'm having a bit of deja vu because 4 years ago we were interviewing for a new interim trustee, and Trustee Graves was the successful candidate. And it's like what goes around comes around. So now it's her turn to leave and have someone else come over to fill in her shoes, which are awfully big shoes to fill. We've worked together very closely as chair and vice chair, and I got to know her very well. And I just have to say that she's an amazing person and was a real asset to this board. So thank you.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. I apologize. I did forget one thing. The Destination Campbellville Community Association this year decided to create bursaries for grade 8 and grade 12 students from the Nascaway area who have made a commitment to their schools and to their community. First of all, thanks to the Halton Learning Foundation for helping create and set up the bursary. They offered some great advice to us, but I'm very, very proud to say that the bursaries all went to HDSB students. There were a number of applications for us to choose from, but the grade 12 bursaries were awarded to J.J. McGee and Theodore Schotzthaler from Milton District, and the grade 8 bursary was given to Ben Hartshorn, who is also one of our student senators and very involved and sits on the ACO committee. So it was absolutely amazing to see somebody, particularly Ben, who does so much with the student senate, to be recognized in that way.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Grabentz, for sharing your reflections of this past school year. As we wrap up the year on a more somber note, I would like to pay a tribute. On Monday, HDSB and Abbey Park High School in particular lost a terrific teacher, cherished librarian, beloved coach, and caring and compassionate mentor, Mr. Bob Hepburn. Today I attended a friendly game of touch rugby organized by grade 12 students. This game, in memory of Mr. Hepburn, a hockey, football, and rugby coach, involved a team of students playing against a team of staff. The bleachers were full of students, including some who were in the process of studying for their exams. I also visited the library, which the students are lobbying to name in Bob's name, and which has been turned into a memorial and reflection space for students. There I took in the overwhelming display of gratitude for the wonderful teacher and inspiring man that Bob was, and a display of sorrow for such an untimely passing of such a beloved man. On the wall of the library hang large poster boards where students continue to write their very personal and touching comments. Bob's desk in the library is covered with dozens of floral arrangements, cards, and journals where students are writing their condolences. There is also a very prominent GSA display in honor of the caring, compassion, and support that Bob showed to the LGBTQ+ student community and the tremendous work he did to ensure that all Abbey Park High School is a very inclusive and welcoming place and community that we have today. I am wearing this ribbon in support of Pride Month and in support of the LGBTQ community at HDSB and worldwide. I'm also joining the students and staff of Abbey Park High School in wearing this ribbon in honor and gratitude of Bob Hepburn and his life's work, dedicated to all students in helping them to grow and mature into resilient, thriving individuals able to enhance and attain their potential. Bob is and will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Oliver, for that. Many of us around the table knew Bob, and we've known Bob for many years, and he was a fantastic teacher. But more importantly, he was a fantastic human being that supported kids, and he had a loving family. So it's a tremendous and sudden tragic loss for the Abbey Park community, those of us who knew him, but most importantly for his family. Most significantly, it's a real shame, but well, you can't really describe. But I want to thank the TERT team and those that were at the school to help the students and the staff through it. But it'll be a loss that'll be felt for some time at that school. I just have a couple other comments that I forgot to mention in my director's report. We have a teacher who has worked at Abbey Park, actually, but she's at Backlog now, Melissa Snedden, her name. And Melissa Snedden is the first female to be a lines, they're called referees assistants. I'm still used to linesmen in soccer at an international match in the Under-17 World Cup in Central America. Not an easy environment to referee a game, and she refereed a game in there. And I think Melissa may be on the trajectory to be at the World Cup, Women's World Cup at some point, but perhaps even the Men's World Cup as perhaps the first female. The last thing I'd just like to say, if you like art, and many of you do like art, get yourself to the Oakville Town Hall sometime in the month of July, and you will see the fantastic art that the teachers in our board produce. It's a display by all our art teachers all across the board, and it will be in the Oakville Town Hall for the entire month of July, and I think August. I can't say for sure August, but July for sure.
Okay, seeing no more people on the speakers list. May I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Gray!
Shocking.
Seconded by Trustee Graves. Okay. All those in favor. I didn't even bother with discussion. Trustee Pappen is gone, I guess. So I'm going to end voting. And that passes unanimously with everybody who's still in the room. Thank you very much. And I don't want to see you guys. Well, I want to see you guys quickly. Well, I'll see you tomorrow night at the retirement dinner. But I mean, with regards to a board meeting, we'd love to get this resolved. Right. Thank you very much.